All right, guys, we are coming to you live from an undisclosed location atop the Rocky Mountains in the beautiful Pacific Northwest of the United States of America on the planet Earth in the Orion Spur of the Sagittarius Arm of the Milky Way. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of In the Den. Guys, I have got a treat for you today. I promise you that. We have got a channel that, I'll be honest, guys, I could listen to this person read the phone book to me, and I'd be just as happy. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Chick Mandela Effect Channel. Thanks for joining us, Chick. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute honor and a pleasure. I really, really enjoy your channel. I really enjoy what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and switch up, turn my cam off now.
Okay.
And we'll get started with this. Skookums, hey, glad to see you over there in the chat. Do you got the chat pulled up, Chick?
I'm going to pull it up right now. 1 second
Excellent.
here.
Let me go ahead and get my camera reset. I know it's a little bit unprofessional, guys. I apologize. There we go. So there's Chick's Mandela channel, or Chick Mandela Effects channel, I'm sorry, showing on the screen here. She's got all kinds of work. She's got a lot of geography work, but she's into a whole lot of stuff that we will cover as we go along here. How you been, Chick? How's things been going for you?
Things have been going okay. I've been having a lot of like aches and pangs and pains and stuff, and that's usually like a sign for me that there's shifts happening. So we'll see where that leads us to.
That was intriguing because my friend Kat, Mountain Cat is what she goes by. She the week you were talking about your back was hurting and stuff, she had the same issues, and she never has back issues at all, ever. So when that one shift came and you said your body and your back was hurting real bad, and I was listening to you on Lost and Found, and I was like, holy crap, we're experiencing that too.
I know. And I had a look at the spine, and it seems to be a lot like thicker, like a lot bulkier, if that makes sense. And also the rib cage is kind of going in and out like an accordion. So I suppose it's not too crazy that it would be paining and aching.
Right. Yeah. What about the ears? Have you had any ear issues lately?
I've had the ringing in the ears.
Okay. So that said, I don't want to influence any answers. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
All right. So let's go and get started with the interview. How long have you been affected then?
Well, for me, it's been, I like to say tapered, because it wasn't just that, you know, I realized things were affected one day, as in I saw changes in reality, and then one day it became so crazy I couldn't ignore it. So I saw changes in 1996, and I saw a big change in 2008 where I flip-flopped to how the map looks here and now, and then I flip-flopped back home, and I didn't end up back here in Orion Spur, or whatever it is, the Orion place with the crazy sun and the crazy moon and these how the countries are laid out here. I didn't come back here until election night 2016.
Gotcha. What a heck of a night that was, too. So what was your first ME then?
So the very first ME for me was that I can recall anyway, was the mystery country off of Australia that has like shown up in a couple of places recently. So I'm not sure whether or not we'll get to see that soon.
Oh, it showed up more than on the Dazed and Confused map?
Yeah, it showed up in a couple of different places. So that's why I'm kind of like hopeful, especially like the particular, hang on, let me just hold this up here if I can. It turns out that there's like the mystery country that I remember and another country on top of that one, like another island.
Right.
So if I can just...
Well, actually, we'll get into that a little bit later about that actual mystery country, if you just want to wait on pulling that up.
Yeah, for sure.
I've actually got a couple of questions about that later on.
Okay.
Was your channel always a Mandela Effect channel?
I think basically it was, as in when I started up the channel, like I knew I was going to talk about the Mandela effect, but I said it's basically going to be a paranormal channel where I could talk about, you know, time travel and all these different things and the Mandela effect, but then basically the Mandela effect took over.
I know what you mean. Did you have it? So like kind of halfway answered it. Did you have a interest in a lot of paranormal and conspiracies before the Mandela effect?
Yeah, I had, because I was in a situation in my life, like growing up especially, where I noticed the paranormal and none of the people around me could see it. So it was kind of, it wasn't even something I really had to go and look for. It was something that kind of was with me the whole way along.
Gotcha. You said you had the ear ringing. Is that like a loud pitch for you, or is it like a low tone? Because I've heard people claim both.
There's both. Before I moved the last time from where what I consider my home to this place here in Orion, I had loads of the really deep, like bassy, like booming ear ringing. And then since I've been here, I've had a bit of that, but mostly it's been the really high-pitched ear ringing.
I agree. I've had I've had ear ringing for quite a while, but I've been recently, like when I start really hearing it, trying to close my eyes, quiet everything else, the computer and everything, and try to focus on the ringing. And I was doing that last night, and I noticed it has a bit of a modulation to it to me. Have you noticed that?
Do you mean as in you can affect the pitch or the
yeah, I don't know if I'm affecting it, but the pitch seems to go like a little lower than high again. It look like modulates just ever so slightly.
I find if you like strain and you focus on it, you can kind of dip the frequency a little bit.
Gotcha. I haven't tried that personally. I was just talking to somebody the other day and said, well, when it happens, focus on it. So I kind of started doing it last night. And like I said, I heard a bit of a modulation. Do you consider yourself empathic?
I suppose I would.
Like high empathy for animals and humans, and just, do you feel any emotions off people, anything like that?
I do, yeah, but I would usually like be someone that's kind of sensitive to like the vibe of a place. Like if I go in somewhere new, especially, like just I get a lot of information from what I can feel about it.
Right.
So I suppose if that's kind of a branch of
empathism, then how about when you meet people? Do you get like a vibe off of them?
Usually I'll block out what I feel about people, because I kind of feel like it's kind of prying. If someone is, just has a really strong feeling about them, like that, stay away from this person, then I listen to that. But I try to let people kind of prove themselves. Like, you judge a tree by its fruits instead of kind of preemptively trying to judge somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to walk on you. My fault.
No, I'm sorry.
Without getting too personal, do you have any personal Mandela effects that you would like to share with us?
Well, I suppose some of the more personal ones are the people that I know in my life. Like, not only are they different, but they don't share the same memories as I do, with things like we did together and conversations we had and all this kind of stuff. And that was strange for me, because one of my friends that, we've been friends since we were 12. And when we were teenagers, we went to Berlin together. And I said, oh, she's going to remember like Germany the way I remembered it looking. She's going to remember the European map like the way I remember it looking. So when I show it to her, she's going to be freaked out. And when I showed it to her, she didn't see anything different at all.
Gotcha. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here, because when you talk, they're seeing just black screen. They're not seeing an emoticon or nothing. So I'm just going to leave that on the screen there for now.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the flip-flops? We've been seeing a little bit more of these here recently.
For me, flip-flops, like I almost see the different realities as like a merry-go-round. And I know some people believe that there's just one reality and things are morphing. But I honestly, like from the flip-flops I've seen and the different people I've spoken to about their how they've experienced this and the realities that they've come from, I believe that there's not only different places that we, the affected, have come from, that have grown up all our lives in, but also when changes occur, we can flip-flop backwards or we can progress forwards into a different change.
I like that. I like that. All right. From your research, how long has the Mandela effect been occurring, in your opinion?
Well, it's very difficult to say because the Mandela effect rewrites history.
Right.
So all the artifacts we have are artifacts of the present because they're being constantly rewritten. So we don't have any artifacts of the past. So it's very difficult to know what the past even was. The best things that I can find are, like, I think I found the original shape of Australia and I had posted that on my channel. And I also, let's see, what else did I find that was kind of outside the box on that? It just seems to be that, I'm trying to think what other things I found that were just like trying to find like actual artifacts of the past. Because, like I said, we don't have anything to inform us of the past here.
Right, that's true. You spoke on this a moment ago, time anomalies. So I heard you mention on your channel that there were certain years you believe there were like big shifts. Can you go over that real quick, Willis?
Oh yeah, so within my lifetime, like not, looking at the past further than that, what I've seen from reading everybody's Mandela story that I could possibly find was that there was a shift of people in 1996 who saw reality changes. There was a shift of people in 2001 that saw reality changes. There was a shift or a wave, whichever you want to call it, in 2008. And there was obviously the big shift and wave of 2015, 2016. And now smaller wave of people came in for 2017.
Right. It's funny you mentioned '08 because I got a story about '08 where my friends literally played musical personalities that year. And a year later, it happened one more time, but it wasn't as major. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned '08 and that. When I first heard that, you talking about that on your live stream and your channel, I went, whoa, hold on a minute. Okay, that makes sense. What is your opinion on the Mandanimals?
Well, it just seems to be that, like, I can't even say evolution because with the Mandela effect, there's no need for slow evolution or for slow geological shift. So it just seems to be that the animals that were created, again, it's kind of the lost and found bin concept. Some of them stayed in particular realities and others became extinct or just never existed at all in some realities and showed up elsewhere for reasons unknown. And also these different changes to animals, just like the most recent one we saw there, where pigeons and some birds like this are producing milk for their young, which is not actually that common in the bird world. At least it wasn't for where I'm from. It might be here.
And what got me about that is they still regurgitated. I guess they created in their throat and regurgitated back into the babies still. You know what I mean?
Well, that makes more sense to me, kind of, because I'm like, the whole situation of like little chicks and like a pigeon that's trying to like feed them, like, mammal young, except they don't have lips, they have beaks. Like the whole thing is a little too complicated unless it's done the original way, I guess.
Gotcha. Real quick shout out to the chat room: Scott Harrison, Skookum, Seeker of Truth, Brandon Halzier. I know Mountain Cat's lurking back there. Michelle Matthews. I think that's everybody we got in chat. And Dark Slayer. So, real quick question off the cuff. I ain't even got this written down. Have you watched a lot of Lone Eagle's work?
I have, yeah.
I think I would love to see you two get together and just discuss map changes for a whole show. That would be freaking brilliant.
That would be fun. We're not from the same place, so I'm not sure like how far we would get, but we must have some common ground.
That's what would be interesting to see, what you both agree on and what you're both like, no, not like that for me, but it's like that for you. I think that'd be great. We're going to move along to anatomy real quick. I just have a couple questions on this. What is your opinion on the crazy anatomy changes? And the reason I ask is we hear about it, we see it, but I've heard people going to the doctor and saying, I've got scans and mine's not different. What do you think about those?
Well, I think that there are definitely people who have talked to me on my channel who their home-based reality, like where they grew up, is basically like where we are right now, or pretty similar to where we are right now. So it could be that for them, like the main makeup of the current body is familiar to them. But for a lot of us that are from further out of town, shall we say, the body seems to be a completely different evolutionary track. Everything from the skull being more elongated to the back, to the bones behind the eyes, and the holes in the face of the skull, the supposedly for nerves to come out through these holes. They're like, oh, you won't be able to feel your face if you don't have these like nerve holes in your face. It's just like, no, that's not how that works.
Oh my goodness, I'm so wrong. I have this bad habit. Somebody says something, it'll trigger a song in my head. Now in my head, all I can hear is, I can't feel my face when I'm with you. Oh, all right. Moving along. That's unprofessional. Do you think, okay, so here's a thought that occurred to me on the anatomy changes. It seems like each shift or every couple of shifts, we get a different anatomy change. Do you think we're being changed each shift to handle the next one better?
I don't think so, because it's just as physically tolling now as it was way back when. So it's, at least it's not helping me cope better physically. All the changes all the time, like I suppose perhaps we have different awareness levels, but I can literally feel my bones aching, like when you're growing, like in your teen years and you're having your growth spurt. It's like going through that like on a more regular basis, and literally seeing like the rib cage taper in and then the rib cage go out again and taper in again, and just all these changes that don't really make any sense and kind of leave you, because for me anyway, it can be once a week or it can be every couple of days that there's a shift. So by the time the change has happened and you've recovered from the change, then you're on to another change. So you didn't really get any further ahead than you were before.
Gotcha. We were speaking off air briefly, and I was telling you about, so on the Lost and Found bin, you had mentioned your back had hurt and during one of the shifts, and you had a lot of pain, which you didn't normally have. I actually had a couple people in my own like personal life around me that had the exact same issues at the exact same time. So I think there really could be something to us actually feeling these shifts.
I think so too. I'm not sure to what degree we feel it, and if we feel it for most shifts, because I know there's been like quite a few shifts where I didn't feel that much. Like it was more like a map change or something like that kind of let me know like, oh, there, something's happening right now. But then also there's this thing about tapered shifts where the whole the big part of a big shift where you'll hear that there's been an earthquake and all that kind of stuff, and then a couple of days later there'll be a map change, and a couple of days later there'll be a body change. So sometimes it doesn't always come in all on one day.
And that's so intriguing too to me, the fact that it doesn't all come in at once. I'm going to move on now to synchronicities. Do you have any synchronicity numbers or anything that you see like all the time?
It would have to be like 1111 and 444 and the twos. There's like a couple of numbers that would show up like for me quite a bit.
I have 911, 1111, and 1234 constantly for whatever reason. How about other synchronicities? Not necessarily number wise, but like, do you have a whole lot of weird synchronous things happen just in your regular life?
Yeah. And I tend to, like, when something's lined up in that direction, I tend to just see what, I tend to go with it, basically.
Gotcha. I find a lot of myself, and ironically, it used to happen to me almost like hourly, and that's not even exaggerating. And since the Mandela effect, it's slowed down to where it's more what would be considered normal terms for most people,
I hear you. And I wonder if where we physically are in the world affects when and where we will shift to. And maybe that's why synchronicities had to line up to get us to specific places, because we're all spread out from each other, and that seems to be deliberate. and then to be in specific places when shifts occur so that we end up, on the other side of the shift.
Absolutely. Have they sped up for you after the ME? With me telling that story, have the synchronies sped up for you or slowed down? Synchronicities?
The synchronicities are pretty much the same. There will be times when there's kind of less of it. It'll like lull down, and then there'll be times where it's almost like there's something trying to get my attention, and I pay a lot of attention to what do I feel about this. Like, do I feel like this is a positive thing? Like, is this a little push like from heaven to like get moving on something? Because obviously if it's not something good, then I don't want to follow it. But it always seems to be something good that puts me in the right place at the right time to do whatever it is I need to do.
Right. And it's funny how fate or whatever you want to call it actually manipulates stuff behind the scenes like that sometimes to put us exactly where we need to be. I was watching your show the other night doing some catching up because I ended up unsubbed for your channel for whatever reason. And was working on these questions. I had paused it randomly, your show, and I paused it at the 2-hour, 18-minute mark. Well, I looked down at my phone because I was getting ready to step outside, and I looked down, and it's exactly 2:18 a.m. Whoa, that's crazy.
That's a bit of a sync, all right.
I thought that was really cool. I want to tell you about that.
That is cool.
Yeah, when I did it, I was like, whoa, no way. Let's move on now to a little bit about the NPCs. For those who don't know, non-player characters, people that have those really weird reactions when you tell them about things like the Mandela effect. Have you experienced people's personalities shifting like overnight to you?
Yeah, and it's been a very strange one for me especially because, like I said, having been awake to the paranormal before the Mandela effect like really started hitting me, I just only seen like those changes in 1996 that I couldn't really explain, so I didn't focus on that too much. There was like other things going on, and I used to think, well, okay, well, the people who can't understand, they don't know what I'm talking about with these paranormal things. I used to just call those people spirit blind. Like they can't even like in their imaginations like figure out what I'm trying to talk about. But they still seem to be like fully, well-rounded people. It's just if you brought up anything like that, they would go a little bit NPC-ish. And then when the Mandela effect hit, they stopped being like fully rounded, believable people. Believable as characters. If we want to say it like as a non-playable character thing, they lost a lot of dimension and a lot of dynamics to their personality and how they are as people, and they became what we call like the dreaded NPC, where they don't have natural curiosity. They don't know what anything looks like, but they think that you're ridiculous for saying that something looks different than what it looked like before, but they don't know what it looks like either way, but they'll call you out on it. Just all kinds of strange things on how they function.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. They'll tell you you're wrong, but they have no way to prove that they're right.
Yeah, they don't know what it's like. Well, okay, I'm wrong. Well, would you tell me like what it was? Oh, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You just told me I'm wrong. So like, what is the right answer? Well, I have no idea. Well, what does a map of the world look like? Well, I don't know. And these like these are people I've asked who are well traveled, who have flown all over the place, and visited various different places in the world, capital cities, photographs everywhere. And I'm like, well, what does the world map generally look like? Like, where is South America in your memory and all these? I have no idea. I don't know.
Gotcha.
And like the human memory is really bad, I'm like, if it's that bad, how on earth are we not extinct? You can't be that silly. Like, it's not even safe to be that silly, where you know nothing at all about your surroundings.
The chat room's going nuts right now over the NPC, where a lot of people are saying, I don't like the name NPC, and it's not. And I'll give them that. The only reason I use that is it's the most commonly accepted term across the board as far as the effect goes. Spirit blind, there's a good way to say it.
That's what I used to always call them, and maybe that's a good term, because there's things that they're blind to that you can't wake them up to. No matter how much proof you get, no matter how documented you have everything, it's like a supernatural blindness or a confusion upon them. They can't see what you're talking about.
Agree. So we'll go with spirit blind for the rest of the interview if I can remember to change NPC to spirit blind as I'm asking the questions. Do you have anyone in your offline life that you can talk to about the effects? Because a lot of people feel very alone and very constricted and can't talk to a lot of people about it. So do you have many people in your waking life that you can talk to?
No, but like for the most part, none of them can really see what I'm talking about. I have some people that, you know, are kind of in that middle ground where they see some stuff, but they don't want to pursue it. Like, it's not relevant to them to pursue it. So, you know what I mean? That kind of in-between area that's also a little bit baffling, where people are like, oh yeah, I can see that, you know, what you're talking about, but I don't want to look any further into it.
Gotcha. I've been really lucky. I'm surrounded by people that either, like, I got a really good friend. Her and I do a lot of theories and study it really deep, and she's into the 5D and things like that. I've got a lot of people around me that, like you just said, they'll see it. That's cool. What's for dinner?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's like, oh yeah, I totally get that. Where do you want to go eat? Do you want to go to Subway or something? It's like, no, what? Don't subject change. Like, we're almost breaking through on something. But
exactly.
No.
It's like, oh, my reality's changing? Oh, well, don't matter.
Reality's changing, but, you know, dinner is more important.
Yeah, it boggles my mind. The most important thing probably in the history of humanity, but I don't care. I'm hungry.
Yeah. So, but I suppose, like, you have to be ready to take this on because there's various implications about things not being written in stone, like we were always told to believe that it was. And there are some people that don't want to take that on. They can't do that. They have to believe in materialism to feel safe, almost. They have to believe everything is solid around them and it's not going to change.
True. Very, very true. Have you had any strange reactions from people when discussing the ME aside from what's for dinner?
Like, I suppose that some of the reactions were baffled, like, because there are conversations that I've had with people that apparently have never happened now, where, like, they've told me things, I'm even thinking of, like, medical conversations, like, where people have told me things about their, you know, what their doctor said to them or whatever, and now those conversations never happened. And I'm like, well, I have this information because you told me, not you, but some form of you before this hit me. So, like, and then they're baffled by that because they're like, I didn't tell you and there's no way you could know. And I'm like, you did tell me, it just wasn't you.
I haven't had that experience where somebody's told me something and totally deny they ever told me. That hasn't happened to me yet. There's a question that I ask every person that's come on my channel ever since I started doing this show. Do you think it is right to wake the people up to the Mandela effect?
I think that people on some level must be given a choice. And I think it's on a very unconscious level for a lot of us, where you decide whether or not you want to look at this thing. Because I know that seeing reality glitches in the past, even though it was just as important as it is today, it wasn't my number one priority. Like, it was like, well, another one of these paranormal things that nobody can relate to me about. And even one of the questions I was asked, well, what's the name of this country that you remember beside Australia? And I said, I can't remember. And then they were like, well, since you can't remember the name, you're clearly just imagining it. So there's always that kind of angle too, where they try to tell you that you're wrong. They try to tell you you just don't remember.
The mystery country just boggles my mind. And we'll get into that, like I said, here shortly. But that's one strange thing about it. A lot of people remember it. I'm unsure. I'm not the geography person by any means. Pretty crappy at geo in school, so I'm not even going to pretend. But everybody that does remember it, nobody can remember the name of it.
Yeah, because in certain instances, like we have our memories wiped, and then in other instances, we get to hold on to our original memories.
Have you had a lot of trouble with the spirit blind trolls? I remembered, yay, on your channel.
When I first started my channel, yeah, I had a lot of trouble. But it's been a lot quieter, especially recently, so that's been really good.
Good deal. It seems like the Mandela effect's really starting to pick up in more circles than it was, say, a year ago when you and I started making videos.
I'm hoping it's picking up. I heard that a lot of people had left YouTube and went to Reddit and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's, message boards are cool, but I think that we need each other's voices because we need to be able to relate to each other on some level about this, because often the people, I know not in your case, but like often the people around you are not able to. So then you're kind of alone on it.
And I hear so many stories about that. Like, I've been really, really lucky. I've only had a couple, and I work with the public. So even when I bring it up to the public, I've only had maybe one or two that, no, you're out of your mind, you're crazy, whatever,
I hear you. And I think like also because for some of the videos I was speaking about the Bible, and that's always going to be a very difficult subject for people, because people have told me like the things that they've seen have been this way since the 1970s or since the 1990s or something. I'm like, yeah, that's how this works, is that the changes don't all come at the same time for us. We see things in different decades changing at different times, even if we're talking to each other.
Isn't that so weird that, and that's something else I want to ask you about, how I can see it something change, say, today, but you seen it 2 months ago change.
Yeah. And the weirdest part is then when we have that conversation, when you tell me, oh, this just showed up, and I say to you, oh yeah, that was there 2 months ago. And how could we have been talking to each other and it was just, ocean for you, but it was a country for me. So you couldn't have bought a plane ticket to it because it wasn't real, but I could have. But we're still talking to each other, unless we had counterparts with shared intelligence where we know we were talking to each other, or, something more complicated along those lines.
Right. And for those wondering what she's talking about, we'll get into the whole plane ticket thing in a minute about going someplace where it didn't exist before. Do you think we'll ever overcome the stigma that's behind the Mandela effect? Because let's be honest, when you say Mandela, people go, nope, don't want to hear it.
I think it's interesting that people go, no, I don't want to hear it. But there's a real, there's a real interest for a lot of people to just keep pursuing this and to try and find where it leads to. And then there's other people who just don't want any part of it whatsoever. And I don't understand really why you would be so against it. I can understand why people might be disinterested in it, because maybe this paranormal stuff is just not their thing and they're just disinterested. Right. But there's some people that are absolutely no, they don't want to look in any way at this thing.
Let me think of the way I want to word this real quick. I'll come back to that. SMQ said that he believes that everyone is affected and just don't want to admit it. Paraphrasing. So that said, do you think it could be like just a fear-based thing, like a fight or flight, where people just shut it down and ignore it?
I think so. I think that if there's somebody who's like seriously affected and they don't want to see it, they may be able to just shut it out and ignore it. And then there's, people that are from very similar realities to here. So it maybe looks like almost nothing is shifting. So they haven't woken up to it.
Gotcha. And SMQ, if you're watching, I was just paraphrasing. I know that wasn't word for word. Okay, so we're going to go on and start talking about some shifts, or the quantum storms, which I think is a brilliant name. How many timelines, if more than one, have you been able to track since you've been researching the Mandela effect?
Well, there's a couple of, it's almost like looking for landmarks where you try to say, oh, well, this is the, I call like my original timeline the Denmark timeline, because Denmark was in a totally different place. And that's like what woke me up first in 2008 when I had my flip-flop. So there's certain things like that where you can find like maybe the Jiffy and totally desert Nevada timeline, and then maybe there's the Jiff and the Nevada with the Nevada Lake timeline. Like you have to look for the landmarks and be like, oh yeah, I remember that, so you know when you flip-flopped or not. And then as far as the quantum storms go, I'm still working on the video that I'm going to post about it, and I'm not sure when it's going to be ready, but I want to post about like my theory anyway as far as the quantum storms go, is that when we see these huge releases, like after a shift, when there's often, you know, an earthquake that follows or something like that, or there's just a huge release of energy where people, it's either positive energy or negative energy. I looked into that as particle agitation, like down to the smallest molecules of us, and we experience it as a whole if we go across like the holographic principle where the smallest sum is the sum of the entire picture. But,
right.
You know, so I was thinking where we have these different timelines and reality presumably being made of information. I'm kind of going along that line right now, but I'm still open-minded about it. Is that where the two timelines are kind of converging like against each other, that overlap area is where I believe the quantum storms occur, because they may even be moving in opposite directions. So I think that that's the focal point where this, like the pressure basically, where the shock wave originates and then reverberates throughout reality as we shift from one, you know, co-running or converging timeline to another.
I think that is absolutely brilliant. And for those who are listening, I am trying to get together with both Chick and SMQ to work on this quantum storm theory, because I think it's actually got a lot of merit to it and could give us a lot of clues to where we're headed. I want to start sharing notes back and forth on that, see if we can't come up with a full working theory that can literally predict the next shifts.
That would be amazing if we can do that. If we can find the common stream, shall we say, because perhaps there is kind of like a main stream where most people are shifting in the same direction at the same time, and then there's, you know, offshoots of streams like where people are flip-flopping back and forth and going to different places at different times. But if we could come up with something that works for most people to say, you know what, it looks likely there's going to be a shift next week, so be prepared for that, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Something else I've noticed in the shifts, and this is another one that ain't even on my list. Have you noticed a color theme across the shifts?
I have. I've noticed the color themes with different animals and plants and things like that. And I've seen like some of the color themes come and go. So I figure it's some kind of coded information. So I started looking into light and color spectrums as they exist here, and light waves. And even though red is identified as heat, which, you know, is from a particle being more agitated, moving faster, that's heat. In this world, in Orion, red is the longest, slowest light wave.
I thought that was blue in our old world.
Yeah, in this world, blue is the fastest light wave.
Interesting.
And they also have a thing called
in this one.
I believe it's called blue reach and red reach, where how they instead of saying, well, oh, some of these things are because they used to say that our world is moving from one light spectrum more towards another light spectrum, but in this particular reality and right where we are right now, they've been saying that blue shift and red shift, that's what it's called, is that something that's like, I believe if it's blue shift, it's further away or it's moving away from you.
Away from us, yeah.
In outer space, and then red shift, it's moving towards us.
Yeah.
And that is a type of measurement that is not familiar to me.
Yeah, that's a Doppler measurement. The Doppler effect, I believe, is what that works on.
Oh, okay.
So, you want to note that down, do some looking at that. Here's my theory, and I just come up with this last night, like totally out the blue, off the top of my head. In the beginning, we had the Rainbow Mountains, the Rainbow Forest, the Rainbow River, the Rainbow, you name it.
Yeah.
And then we started seeing specific color themes. So I pulled up a rainbow and I was looking at the patterns, and those can argue that the rainbow's backwards. I don't remember what it was. I don't know as far as which color follows which. But with the rainbow as it is right now, and I'm trying to find my notes on it, so bear with me. Flipping through my notebook here. Almost there, I promise. So a year ago, we had blue, then we had red and green. I don't know the order we had these in. I just noticed the videos were all a year ago. And then yellow and orange. Well, here recently, I was watching Once Upon a Timeline last night, and she was talking about how she's noticed all these orange things all of a sudden showing up on monkeys and different animals. I'm assuming that the next shift, if I'm right, or the next wave or storm, should bring in the color yellow theme stuff. And I could be wrong, but let's keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, let's see if it shifts up in that order. Because I know... No, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that for me, I'd noticed that there was a pink shift and then a green shift. So it wasn't in order for me.
Right. And I could be wrong. This is just a top of the head, what if type thing. So everybody watch for the next shift, see if there's a color, and if it is, see what color it is. I'm assuming yellow. I don't know. Have you ever caught anything, and I know you do a lot of map geography, so you may have actually done this. Have you caught anything mid-shift?
I do believe that there was a, how can I even say this, kind like a semi-residual. So it wasn't my discovery, it was a different channel. I can't think of his name right now, but he was using, the Google Maps, the Google Earth, and there was like a between shift thing where if you zoomed out, Greece was, it looked like my original timeline, like it was like the one country basically, and Cyprus was very close to it. And then when you zoomed in one more time, Greece turned into all the islands and Cyprus over by Turkey, like it is here. And he would like zoom in and out and show like somehow there was two different realities going on in the same Google Earth. So that was like a semi caught in the middle of a shift deal.
I've seen a couple things, and I've seen a couple researchers where they'll be researching something and they'll find double information on the exact same thing on Google. Have you had that happen?
I've definitely heard of weird double information. I know that one of the notable cases of getting double information and getting it wrong was the State Department was giving foreign aid to Andorra because it was listed as a poor African country. And Andorra, in this reality, is a rich European principality. So they got mega embarrassed and said, oh, we have no idea how we made that mistake, and we've been giving them foreign aid as an African country for years and years and years. It's like, yes, you have, because it was elsewhere.
I remember that story. And when we get on the map changes, I've got another question about Andorra too. For those waiting, like Sam TT, for instance, we are getting the map changes. I promise it is a big part of this. Svalbard, yeah. She talked a lot about Svalbard. We'll touch on that here briefly too. So I'm trying to keep up with the chat and the conversation here.
Yeah.
Have there been any what are some signs to you that we are in the middle of a shift or that one is about to begin?
Oh, well, the physical signs, like the ear ringing and the bones aching and those kind of signs, I can feel those, and that alerts me like, oh yeah, okay, there's most likely a shift coming up here. Whether it's big or small is unknown to me at that time. And then as far as the others go, like I said, there'll be like a release of energy. There's usually, like for me, when there's been a shift, there will usually be an earthquake in either Indonesia or the Philippines, and the previous earthquake from the week before will have been erased, and there'll be a new earthquake. And like with a big shift, like where loads of countries are different and loads of things, you'll always hear on the news, there's been a huge earthquake here, there's been a huge earthquake there, and there may even be like a tsunami to follow that up. And then that disappears, and then your next shift, there's no recollection of that previous occurrence, and there'll be a new occurrence, and just kind of going around and around and around on that particular thing.
I love the fact that you bring up the earthquakes in this. I would like to, just between me and you, as far as our research goes, watch Dutch Sense channel. If you aren't subscribed already, he has this earthquake map where he's literally shown where the energies are moving through what lines and which direction and everything. So that might actually help our research if we're going to go with earthquake thing.
Oh, okay. What was his name again?
Dutch, phonetic Dutchsinse.
Okay.
He's actually got a really brilliant map he uses, and it follows the lines that he's been using for a couple of years. The energies will literally move through different faults and ways around the planet. So it could actually be good evidence if we are going with the whole agitated particles, earthquake, things like that.
True, but it has to be retrofitted to each reality because the Earth is different sizes in different places, so the countries are in different areas. So, like the Ring of Fire is not the same, and the other earthquake places and where the tectonic plates are is not the same. So it's difficult to superimpose them on top of each other.
All right, I'll keep that in mind too. That's a really good point. And it's weird. It's like the Earth is. Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So much to go over. So much.
I know.
Have there been any specific measurements on our body taken before and after a shift, like people tracking blood tests or anything of that nature?
Yes, there has been.
And what has the findings been?
Every time that there is a shift, people's magnesium level drops.
Interesting. Is it only been magnesium that's been tracked so far? Has it been sugar or anything like that?
So far, it's only been magnesium, and I've heard two different people who are not working together, like, you know, separately doing these like blood tests in concurrence with shifts. And it's like, yeah, people that are Mandela affected, when there's been a big shift, their magnesium level drops and they feel exhausted. They feel, you know, all these different things. Well, with some shifts, you get extra energy and you can't sleep, but with more like energy releasing shifts, you're just like exhausted. You want to sleep a lot.
And have you had a lot of the issues where like just can't sleep, or you lay down to sleep, you're tired as heck, 2 hours later you're up wide awake, ready to go?
Yeah, I've definitely been having that a lot since the 2016. Since I've been in this particular place, it has been constantly either too much energy, can't sleep even though I'm so tired, or so sleepy, sleeping for, like, if I could, I'd just be asleep for days on end, like unreasonably tired for no reason.
Right. We're experiencing that here too. How about eating? Have you had a lot of weird, like hungry sometimes, then go days or so not hungry at all, or anything like that?
For me, it's hasn't been too crazy. I suppose there's been times where I've had, which is another one of like my physical symptoms, is almost like motion sickness when there's like a big shift about to occur. Even though I can't feel like any shaking or anything, it is the same thing as like motion sickness, like if you're in a really bad car on a really bad road or something. So when that happens, I don't want to eat anything. But for me, I know with some people, their flavor preferences change a lot. Mine don't change so much, but for people who have a very sensitive palate, it seems to be that what they want to eat seems to change with shifts, and what tastes good to them changes with shifts. And the only time I really noticed that was like with the main shift over from my hometown to Orion over here, is all the things that I used to think were so delicious from the grocery store. I bought them when I was here in Orion newly, and I didn't like any of them.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I've only had the experience where, like, some days I can't get enough to eat to save my life. Other days, I'll go a day or two and just, you know what, not even hungry, not even a stomach pain.
Oh, wow. Have you, are you from a reality where the stomach was in the middle, or has your stomach always been off to the side?
Definitely middle stomach reality.
I was going to say, like, for those of us that have had the middle stomach reality, we're probably living it up a little bit too much with the side stomach, because the side stomach is more comfortable, it can hold more food, and if you do get ill, it's a lot easier to, you know, barf if you have to, which I always avoid because it's not my favorite thing in the world. But it used to be traumatic with the stomach in the middle. You used to feel like you were dying. At least I did. And here it's like not even that much of a. It's horrible, but it's not the same level of like traumatic whatsoever.
Like the pain isn't as deep under the chest as it used to be?
Yeah, exactly. Like the pain is not the same. And also the cool thing about having it on the side is you can just roll over and your stomach will feel totally different. Like if you have indigestion or something, yeah, at least for me, if I roll on my left side, the indigestion goes away. Whereas if it's in the middle, it doesn't matter how you roll. It's going to be the same.
Right, exactly. I've also heard somebody tell me a couple of weeks ago that if you got a lot of coughing going on, lay on your right side, which is the first time I'd heard that too.
Really? I hadn't heard that, but that's good to know.
Right, is what I said. Yeah. Moving along with the shift questions, in your opinion, and only your opinion, how long does a shift take?
For me, like, especially when I first landed, I'm going to say, a lot of the shifts seem to be that a lot of the changes would come in the one day and then maybe some small changes would follow up. But what I'm experiencing a lot more recently is the shift will spread out over several days. Like I'll feel a big shift and I'll know it's happened. I'll see a body change and I'll check the map and nothing will be different. And then maybe like a day or 2 days later, I'll check the map and there's the changes have followed up. And then maybe a day or two later, there'll be some other change that follows up. So it's weird. It's kind of more tapered right now.
Gotcha. Because when I asked SMQ, he said roughly 3 days. That's why I was intrigued to hear what your answer would be, and pretty much matched it.
Pretty much. I suppose it would also depend on the sources that you check all the time to look for changes.
This is true. I'm trying to get kind of a average from everybody. So roughly 3 to 5 days then is what I'm getting so far.
Yeah.
All right. From your research, have you been able to find any kind of timing in the shifts?
For myself, it can be, like I said, it can be every week or it can be every 3 days. I don't have a lot of like lull periods. Like there are some people where they'll just stop shifting for months on end and then they'll start shifting and seeing numbers again. So I've definitely heard of that with different people throughout the community, but I haven't really experienced that where you're just kind of stay in one place for like ages and then start shifting.
Gotcha. See, I've been trying to track this for a minute. What I've decided to do, and I'm going to put the call again out to the community. If you think there's a shift, write it down. Don't say a word to nobody. Write it down. After a month or two, I want everybody to come together and compare notes. And if we all agree, hey, on the 13th, we all say there was a shift, there's probably one then. On the 24th, we all say there's a shift, there's probably one then. You know, I want to get people together and compare notes individually or compare individual notes and see if we can come up with a standard idea of timeline.
Yes, that would be super cool if we had that, you know, that data to look at and say, like, is a shift more likely in the middle of the month for like most people, or is the shift more likely, you know, what are the surrounding factors and can we figure this out?
Have you found any correlation to lunar activity in shifts?
For me, the moon went bonkers. The moon's been bonkers here, so it's very difficult for me to correlate anything. And it could be me shifting, or it could be the moon going crazy, but one of the things that's definitely mad about this place, which I did notice in 2008 when I visited here for no reason at all, and I didn't know what was going on, the moon was out all day, and it doesn't follow any particular cycle. The moon just does whatever it wants. You can have like a half moon all day, and then a full moon that night, and then a tiny, you know, waning moon the next day and night, and then a half moon and then another waning moon and then another full moon. Like it's not following anything. It's just absolutely wild for me.
I've noticed that the chunks, like the shadow chunks is a little bit more quicker to new moon, a little quicker to full moon, in my opinion. How about the Cheshire moon? And this is, these moon questions are just completely off the top of my head, but how about the Cheshire moon? Was that normal for you?
I never, ever saw one until I came here. I didn't even know what to call them. So I researched, what do you call a Cheshire cat moon in this place? Because I was seeing them just all the time here. And I didn't know what to call them because the normal moon cycle for me from where I'm from is that the moon goes, from one side to the other. The skinny moon turns into a full moon, and then it goes from one. It never goes from top to bottom of the moon. It always goes from one side to the other. And I researched, and they're called wet moons, like W-E-T, wet moons. But they're also called Cheshire Cat moons. And I started to ask the people that say that there's no such thing as shifts, etc., etc. How do you explain Cheshire Cat moons, and where do they fit into the moon cycle? And they were trying to tell me that they didn't happen, or what was my statistics. So I gave them all the photographs I had and the dates and everything, and they just didn't answer me at all.
Gotcha. I've noticed a lot of weird oddities with the moon, including how it looks. But getting back to the shifting questions, we're getting a little off on a tangent here.
I know. It's a good tangent, but yes.
It really is. Like, I love that line of question. We might actually come back to the moon later on. I don't have anything written down, but I might come back to that. Did the population, here's one that I've had a lot of people claim, and I was unsure about this, so I don't know. Did the population change for you? And if so, how drastically?
Very drastically for me. So the place that I'm from, the world was more than 36,000 miles in circumference, and we had 9 billion people living in the world.
I keep hearing that 9 billion come up, and we're down to 7.6 billion for the last year or so. At least 6 months we've been setting that same number.
So for me, it had been only 7 billion, and then it turned to 7.6 like a couple of weeks ago.
Gotcha.
So I've been seeing like a different, like, you know what I mean? Like the different changes at different times kind of thing. But yes, it's been kind of sticking around the number 7 for me, going different levels of 7 or 7 point something or 7. It hasn't dipped down to 6 for me so far, but there are a lot of affected who are from a world of 6 billion people.
A side question to follow up on that. Do you think, have you looked into David Paulides' work?
I haven't. David Paulides? Let me take down his name too.
I can't remember how to say his name. It's really weird. But he talks about the people that have gone missing, like in national parks and stuff, just vanish into thin air.
Oh yeah, okay. I've seen, I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's a channel called, I think it's called Rusty Westfield, and I checked out his work from a Mandela effect perspective to see, like, are people, like, for real disappearing in national parks without a trace?
All right, I'm going ahead and marking that down in my notebook right now. Rusty Westfield.
Yeah, and he would always read out, like, from different years, like, he goes all the way back, all these different people that were standing right beside their families and then suddenly disappeared. There was no sign of anything anywhere ever again. And I was like, that kind of sounds like a shift right there.
Okay, that was my next question right there. You just answered it. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's great. I love you rolled right into it. Kind of sounds like a shift. I was going to say, do you think these people could be shifted out of reality? Yeah, you got it. Why do you think that it is that some people see something change and others don't see it, say, a month later?
I don't know. And like we were talking about earlier, the freakiest part is when you're having conversations like all the time with people online who are Mandela affected, and you tell them, I see a shift, and they say to you, oh, that's always been there for me, or that's been there for a long time for me. And you just go, well, why didn't you answer me when I was posting about it? Why did you not say, oh, no, that's always been, like, that's, you know what I mean? That's something that really is weird to me, in that it just doesn't exist for me. I can't interact with it in my, wherever I exist, but somebody that I'm talking to can and does interact with it because it exists wherever they are.
Exactly. Like, I've seen people, Zimmerman was what got me. I remember watching Andrew Zimmerman back when I actually watched TV. I watched a lot of cooking shows, and I love to cook. And I'd watch Andrew Zimmerman, and he'd go all over the world and go to these different places and try these crazy foods. And then all of a sudden one day it was Zimmern to me, and I thought, wow, it just changed. Some people said, oh, no, that's been changed 6 months ago. What?
I know. And you're just like, whoa. And then it's like, you wonder, like, did you just land in here, way after everyone else, like they shifted ahead of you, or at least that's what I think is like, well, maybe they got here first and that's why they're seeing this. And however things can exist in different realities at the same time, maybe that could explain why some of the YouTubers' names have changed, is that we are us, but we are not the same us everywhere that we are.
Right. And by the way, I know you watched the interview I did with SMQ, and at the end I told him, and I heard you say it too on his show, it didn't have the AI for me in the beginning.
Which now?
SMQ?
Oh, SMQ AI. I was going to say there's been a lot of AI changes with the Mandela effect. Like AI is showing up everywhere. But yeah, for SMQ, there was no AI. And then all of a sudden there was. And he was like, well, I had Twitter. And I was like, I had no idea you had Twitter until, really recently, right now, when I made a Twitter.
Same here.
So like, I couldn't have known about your Twitter and gotten confused because I literally didn't know about it. So the only thing I know is that, it was just SMQ, and he used to have those red backgrounds on his videos.
Yes, the If We Die series. Or We Died in 2012 series, yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't understand. Because I thought that he had just changed it, or he had just gotten a new channel or something. I didn't even think it was a shift until he said, oh no, I've always had the AI.
I remember when he did a video one day, I think I believe he just ended the We Died in 2012 series. Maybe he was during it. But I remember he dropped a video and I looked down at my phone and went, he added AI to that. Pretty cool. I remember that being a thought,
And for me, it hadn't changed that long ago. Like he was still SMQ like last year. And then the SMQ AI for me showed up like this year.
Really?
Yeah.
It showed up for me last year.
Huh.
See, there's another one. Different times.
Different times. And it's this different time thing that we also need more data on too, because it's quite difficult to forecast if it's different times, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Though most of them we can agree on changed immediately. Some of them are not. So that brings me to my next question, amazingly enough. You and SMQ, and hopefully myself, as I mentioned before, are trying to make a quantum forecast for the quantum storms. If you had to give one right this moment, what would it be?
If I had to give a quantum forecast, I would say that not the next shift, but the shift after that, I think it's going to be a bigger one. And I think Australia is going to move further west.
You heard it here first, guys. Australia will move further west, and the 2 shifts from now is going to be huge.
Well, I think it's going to be huge, but that's just like the gut feeling I have about it right now with the things that I'm looking at and the patterns that I see with how the countries are moving. Because I know we had a couple of shifts ago, Australia really moving for the first time away from New Zealand and towards the other countries. And what we're going to eventually see is all the countries, I believe anyway, are going to come closer and closer and closer together. And that's actually another sign that we have become unstuck from our time. Like we're not in our time anymore, because what we're seeing is something that was estimated to happen 250 million years in the future, which is called Pangea Proxima, where eventually all the countries would come back together again. Right. And they want to do that right now. They're like trying to move closer and closer together, and everything's like squishing together as much as it can.
We're about to start on the map changes here in the next couple moments. You want to go ahead and get the map pulled up and start to screen share, and then I'll switch over to your screen there.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, SMQ was throwing out the idea that many more unexplained events in the past could be connected to the ME, like the Bermuda Triangle incidents, things like that. Along that line of thinking, do you know the story of Hy Brazil?
Hy Brazil sounds familiar to me, but I can't recall the story.
Okay, so with your Irish background, maybe this will bring up a little bit of memory. The island that disappeared and reappeared for certain sailors, and they said it had a castle on it, a bunch of crazy rabbits or something or other.
Sounds interesting.
Look into that. It's actually, I believe it's ancient Irish legend, High Brazil. But I was
Okay.
thinking perhaps the fact that it would fade in and out of reality, because some people would have it on maps and sailors would swear they've seen it. Other sailors go and couldn't find it at all. Do you think that could have been maybe a shift thing?
It could very well have been a shift thing. I think that there's a lot of ancient Celtic legends that are actually talking about shifts rather than, magical lands appearing and disappearing out of the sea by like magic, which is what people used to say, is that it could actually be a shift where literally that island didn't exist anymore one day.
Exactly. It's a magic island like that. For those wanting to look into it, I'll go ahead and put the name in chat. It's HY and then Brazil spelled phonetically. For those who aren't good at spelling, once again, it's in chat. Check this out, guys. Really, really crazy legend story. What gets me is some sailors absolutely swore by it. Jay Holland in chat says it's an island shows every 7 years. Interesting.
Oh, well, if it's every 7 years, then that's a piece of data on when we complete the go around the merry-go-round of realities, at least on the part of that island.
It very well could be. I'm going to go ahead and mark that down real quick in my notebook.
It does suggest some kind of orbit, because I've heard things about like islands that appear, every 7 years or every 13 years, like particular numbers. But again, the particular numbers could be legend, because some people just like 13 as a number. But
Right.
7 sounds good. I'm going to mark that down too.
Yeah, definitely. Oop arts. Do you know what oop arts are?
Oop arts?
Out of place artifacts, things that are out of place in time, like finding the Timex in a Chinese tomb within the rock.
Yeah. Familiar with the concept when I used to study about time travel.
Okay, yeah, exactly where I found that information too. I'm so obsessed with time travel. Could the ME, in your opinion, explain some of these oop art things?
Yes, I think so, because like with part of my my theory about the quantum storms, I believe that like remember what I was saying about the overlap area, and that's where I believe that's the focal point of like the shock waves, the energy coming out of it. I think that I think at the very smallest levels, that reality is the particles are pulling apart and coming back together, and when they rearrange, it's not always perfect. Like it's not always exactly like it was before. And I think that in that kind of chaos of like these things pulling apart and coming back together, we see artifacts just show up in places that have no business being there, that are out of their time and out of their place.
Absolutely. Like I said, I studied time travel for a while, and those oop arts, of course, you go and everything as a researcher, very skeptic. But when you start hearing some of the stories about these things, you just have to scratch your head and go, wait a minute, how? Because it's legit archaeological finds,
Yeah, like nobody put them there, trolling or anything like that. It's just literally there are things showing up that, from our linear perspective, before we became unstuck and started to become like travelers, to become like Mandela affected, things used to follow at least some kind of a certain order, and you wouldn't see things just show up all over the place that had no business being here. But it seems like since we've become unstuck, we've seen or noticed more things, like things rather than people, that have become unstuck in their time and place, and they just show up where they have no business being. Like I was just watching Curiouser and Curiouser, and he does amazing videos, and his latest one shows all these different like buildings and stone statues and things like this that are totally crazy and are just popping up all over the place and are out of their time and out of their place. And you can see it when you look at them. You almost get that kind of wrong feeling of like, what is that doing there?
Exactly. I'm going to step away for all of like 1 minute. Can you tell us while I'm gone, what got you started on specifically the geographic changes? Because this seems to become your forte in the Mandela effect community. And I shall return momentarily.
Well, what started for me was, and I hope it's showing up my mouse now. Oh, I think it is. Okay. Was in 2008 when I flip-flopped here to Orion, and there was no talk of, Mandela effects, anything like that. One of the things that I saw that gave me a shock was the map of Europe. and I saw Denmark here above Germany. And that's why the map became like a marker for me on where I was in reality as a whole, like what was going on here, because I looked at the map and everything was different, and it shocked me. And at first I was like, oh, it's a knockoff map. It's wrong. There's no, but then, you know, especially when this happened to me the second time in 2016, one of the first things I did was I ran to find a map, and I saw Denmark here on top of Germany again, instead of being here with Norway and Sweden. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland were these Nordic countries that had their own alliance and all this stuff. It was not down here for me at all. So when I came back here in 2016, however, I fell through reality, and I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. I saw Denmark was back on top of Germany, and I said, I'm back here. I'm back here again.
So do you use the map as kind of your guideline as to which timeline you've landed in?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if the map flip-flops like seriously hard, then you know you're in a different reality, especially if you've seen it before and you've memorized like what that looked like.
Right. So I want to move on to Taured or Andorra. Was Taured, did it exist in your reality or no?
No.
Okay. I couldn't remember I know you've answered out in other channels. I couldn't remember what your answer was though. So the Taured is the story of Andorra that she was just telling us a little while back. If you want to tell our audience just real quickly the story of the man from Taured and why that's actually a thing.
Yeah, so for my reality where I'm from, and I know that I said like Andorra was an African country and everything, there was no principality here, either Andorra or Taured. Neither of them existed. But when people started telling me that Andorra was an African country, that kind of fit better into my understanding of things, because I knew it wasn't European. I'd never seen it before. Like the shape of France is wrong, the shape of Spain is wrong, Portugal, everything here looks crazy to me. But to get into basically what it is that this place that currently exists called Andorra, on a different Sagittarius timeline, it's called Taured. And there was a man, he was one of the first of us, I believe, traveler, basically, like an unstuck person, somebody that ended up out of his place and out of his time. I'll read here what it says about him. On July 1954, a man arrives at Tokyo Airport in Japan. He's of Caucasian appearance, but the officials are suspicious. On checking his passport, they see he hails from a country called Taured. His passport looked genuine, except for the fact that there's no such country as Taured. Police locked him up in a high-security room, and he vanished into thin air. No trace of him was ever found. Experts said...
the stuff that was found on him also disappeared, didn't it?
Yeah, all of the stuff on his person, himself, like they locked the room, and when they came back, there was nothing in the room. Like he just phased into a different reality.
That is such an intriguing story. And I never knew about Andorra until I found that story and I got to look it on maps and I didn't know it was there. But again, I'm not a geography major, so that's not really a thing for me as far as not knowing.
You know what really confused me too is that like, and I didn't pick up on this until like a couple of shifts ago, but in my original, when I was studying time travel, I was convinced that he flew into Beijing, China. And all records here say that he flew into Tokyo, Japan.
It seems to me Tokyo was the story I originally found, but I'm not 100 on that. I knew it was an Asian country. So. Yeah.
So I'm, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I just have this gut feeling like the first time I came across this story, it was a different destination, but it was still, like you say, like still Asia, and it was still the same outcome. They still, like, the story that I'd heard was, like, they took him aside when they looked at the passport and said, could you please point out your country on the map? Like, they showed him a map on the wall. And he went to look for Taured, and it wasn't there, and he had an absolute freak out and panic attack.
Oh, yeah, when they asked him to point it out on the map and show where it was, and he's seen it was Andorra instead of Taured?
From my reality, there was just nothing there at all.
Right.
So he pointed it out and there was nothing there on the map. He went to try and put it out. There was nothing there. So that's when he became hysterical. They arrested him. They locked him in that room. And then when they came back the next morning, there was no sign of him whatsoever.
Gotcha. All right, while we're sticking on the maps, and I think Torre had such a crazy story, because I'm with you. I think he might have been one of the first travelers like us.
I think so.
Tell our audience, go ahead and zoom back out if you would, and tell our audience about the mystery of the missing countries.
The mystery countries. So Australia had another country. Let me see if I can actually pull that up, because I got that picture of the globe here, I do believe.
You got the one with the airplane on it, the globe with the airplane. Was that your picture?
That's Unimatrix 001's picture. He was the one that captured the footage. So I actually have to take a screenshot of this to get it up, because the picture that I saved of it seems to be in the wrong format and it won't open for me. So just 1 second here till I get that picture, and then you will see what I mean about this is like a sizable country. Any of you that have seen the Dazed and Confused map, you'll know the location and the shape of it, like what I'm talking about here. But,
and while you're pulling that up, so the country that you're about to pull up, that matches the exact same one on Dazed and Confused?
Yes, it's the same country, and it's got another country above it.
Nice. So I haven't had a lot of chance to look into that. That's why I was wondering. I've been busy trying to get all kind of stuff together. So
that's why I was saying, if this country comes back into contact with us, I'm going to do everything I can to like remember off by heart its name, because I don't want to lose it again. This has been a long pursuit of mine to find this country again. So
yeah, mark it down on every kind of notepad and everything you got. Maybe one day you wake up and go, what was that? What's that mean? What's the name mean?
What is that country?
There it is.
There's the country there. So I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. Oh, you can see my mouse. So this is Australia right here. This is the mystery country right here. And this is another mystery country, one that I don't remember.
Huh.
But it's right there. And there's writing. There's writing to say what these are called, but it's blurry, unfortunately, so I can't read it. But these are still shots that I took off Unimatrix 001's video.
Nice. The fact that it's got words there telling what it is, now that is intriguing as can be.
I think so too, but unfortunately it's just so blurry that I can't actually read
and it gets worse when you zoom in. It gets a lot worse.
It gets a lot worse. See, so I can't really pursue it, but I really, really want to pursue it. So, but when I zoom out, you can see what I'm talking about here, that there's like, you can see like some words here written over different countries, that they're it's the same text, it's the same size, font, everything like that. And I can even see that it seems to be more deserty on this side of the mystery country, but it's the exact same shape that I remember. And oh my gosh, I don't even want to think about how long ago it was since I've seen this country exist on all the maps, but it's 96 has to be over 20 years now.
So was that in your original timeline, that country?
Yes, this is in my original timeline. But unfortunately, not knowing anything about it, etc., this is the only map change that I remember from my original timeline. I don't remember the other things. So when this disappeared, that's the only thing I know for sure about the very first map that I lived with. And then after that, the world looked pretty much the same, except that this country didn't exist. And it stayed that way pretty much until 2008. Like, if there were tiny changes, I didn't see them, as in it didn't seem to be shifting whatsoever. 2008, massive shift, Orion map, madness, shifted back home for no reason whatsoever. Everything was familiar again on the maps. And then in 2016, shifted back here to Orion map again, crazy. So that's what convinced me that there are different places, because I'm like, Orion was Orion back in 2008 when I visited here. It's not that Sagittarius morphed into Orion.
Right. That's, man, those mystery countries, they intrigued the heck out of me, and they have for a while. Because, like I've said before, I'm not a geography expert, and I'm not 100% on those as far as remembering them or not. But the fact that there's physical evidence to show they were there, that gets me.
Yeah, that they're, and that when, I believe, like, when the physical evidence starts upping in numbers, like we have this now, we have Dazed and Confused, we have some other map where they're trying to say, oh, it's a map ledger, I need to try and find that map too. So when I see this many mentions of it, I'm hoping it'll come into reality for us, because that's what happened to me with the new part of Scotland for me, the Outer Hebrides, was I found a weird map that had this new part of Scotland on it, new for me. And I posted on Twitter and I said, look at this weird long island above Ireland, like, where is it gone now? And nobody answered that tweet. Nobody said that exists, or like it didn't exist on any of the maps that I had around me. And then a couple of days later, it did exist. And there it was. And there's the name of it. Here's the history of it and all these different things. So I think maybe looking at this map here, it's maybe a matter of time until it shows up again. And it would certainly aid Australia shifting closer to the other countries, because it's a lot closer to, as you can see, like the other countries here, to try and close up that ocean as things come back closer together.
Right. Have you noticed Australia looks like Scooby-Doo now?
It does, yeah. It's looking quite strange.
Jay Holland in the chat asks, do you remember ice in the north, like Arctic area, chick?
I do. And it all disappeared when I went to Orion. So it's not that, oh my gosh, it melted or anything like that. Like the ice cap was there and then it wasn't there. And there was no particular explanation.
What gets me about the ice cap, and I apologize for cutting you off, I'll let you finish the thought in just a second. What gets me about that is in the 90s especially, global warming and saving the environment, it was such a big thing, and the polar ice caps are going to melt and it's going to flood the world. Where are all these people now screaming, there's no ice caps, we were right, I told you?
Well, yeah, I know. Like for me, that was in the 2000s, they had that freak out. That's when they started to talk about global warming and the ice caps, and we're all going to drown, and oh my gosh. And then, you know, you turn around in Orion here and it's like, what ice cap?
Right. Like, where are all these people throwing a fit?
Presumably they're back home still throwing a fit.
I love that answer. Oh, forgive me. That was a great answer. All right. Wow. That one got me. So to keep the laughs going, if you want to go ahead and come back to the main map, I've got another great map question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Hebrides, or however you say it.
Yes.
And tell me, and tell the audience, if you would, what in the world is the butt of Lewis?
Apparently it's a part of the Outer Hebrides. So I didn't know how to say it. Thankfully, I had some Scots from this reality, educate me a little bit, which is good. But even they said for them it was the Isle of Hebrides, and some of them said like the Port of Hebrides, but nobody seemed to. Or what am I saying? Hebrides, the Port of Lewis or the Isle of Lewis is what I'm trying to say on the Hebrides, but none of them remember it being the butt of Lewis. Like the Isle of Lewis or the Port of Lewis, but they couldn't tell me when it changed to the butt of Lewis.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to get it pulled up here because I want to see this. The butt of Lewis, guys, I'm going to be honest. If there was a butt anything on the map, we were all crude kids. I know every last one of us watching this were crude little people. And if anything would have been called butt, there would have been so many jokes.
It's true.
Whoa, the word butt is on the map. Did you know butt is on the map? I mean, come on. We would have pointed this out to everyone we could find.
Oh, boy. I'm looking for a better map of the Hebrides because you can't really see it there. It's too small. Okay, one sec. I'm getting a screenshot here.
The place even Lewis don't want to live. Oh, chat's loving this one.
So I'm getting the butt of Lewis for the chat right now. Everybody hold up.
While you're pulling that up, Ireland shifted inwards or Scotland started to lean over Ireland, says Sam TT.
Yeah, it looks like, from my perspective, I'd say that Scotland is leaning over Ireland more. Can you guys see this?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So you can see there it says the butt of Lewis instead of the Isle of Lewis or, the port of Lewis or anything like that makes sense. It's the butt of Lewis.
And this is what, outside of Scotland?
And this is a part of Scotland, yeah. So this is it's just more Scotland.
Any idea when this showed up for your reality?
April, I found the mystery map on April 21st and posted it, and I believe the country came into existence April 24th.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's very close succession, yeah.
That just bothers me because, like I said, I'll say it again and again. I wasn't a geography major. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's different, it's wrong, it's right. But I'm pretty sure, I'm 100% sure there wasn't the word "but" on any map I ever seen.
Nor for me. I don't. Well, like I said, the entire shape of it, location of it, everything is incorrect for me. Doesn't make.
I can understand a butte, but that's like a rise, like landmass.
Yeah. But as you can see there, that's a butt of Lewis. That's not a butte.
It doesn't look like a butt. It does kind of. It's at the end of the landmass, kind of the butt of it. I can see it. I'm sorry. All right. So, Jay Holland in chat one more time. At Chicken at Dark Wolf. How about the country of Holland and its capital? Do you remember it? It did a 404 on us now.
For me, Amsterdam was the capital of Holland. But Holland isn't even a thing anymore, is it now? Now it's the Netherlands.
Oh, really? Holland's not a thing?
Holland's not, I think Holland is, here in Orion, Holland is just considered, part of the Netherlands, but, it's called the Netherlands now. They don't want to say Holland.
Huh. Now that's intriguing. I didn't know that. It's the first I've heard of that. The other day, I was asking in chat if anybody would submit questions for you, and you've got a very, what's the word I'm looking for? You got a viewer that really enjoys your stuff. Can't tell you the words I'm trying to say, so you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
A very big subscriber on your channel named Linz V, and she asked, have you noticed any changes to Vancouver, British Columbia Island, and coastline? They said that it changed for them a year ago, and another person said it changed for them 2 years ago. What is your opinion?
Yes, it did. As far as the Canadian coast, on the west coast, let me just pull this up here. Alaska has taken over most of the Canadian west coast. Let's see if I can pull this up here and show people just how far south Alaska comes now. And the effect that has, not only that the island is talking about, British Columbia Island is down here in the United States. I hope that's screen sharing. Let me check. Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah, there's so many changes going on here with the border. You guys see the Alaskan border here, how it comes down half of Canada? This is all the United States here, this part of the border.
Whoa. That's a lot of crazy island work down at the edge of Canada there off Alaska.
Yeah, it's like the whole coast just crumbled and turned into teeny weeny little islands. And, and I said, this is not... This was, for me, it wasn't that recent of a change. I'm going to say perhaps 6 months or so. Okay. As in, it's been that way for a while for me. But Hudson Bay being that big is newer for me.
Yeah, you guys been following Hudson Bay for a while now, haven't you? How long has it been expanding and growing?
For me, Hudson Bay, that was, when was that? Was that in March that grew? I did a video at the time, as soon as I saw it get that big. And I had somebody who was from a really old timeline contact me and say, I remember when Hudson Bay was in New York instead of the Hudson River. And I was like, yeah, I remember that too from the 90s, but that's been gone for, a long time now. And here's the Hudson Bay is, Canada, and it's massively a huge part of Canada as we see here.
See, I thought it was part of New York too, not gonna lie.
It was, it's just a long time ago for most people, they forget by now. or maybe they kind of remember, but they're because it's still Hudson, you know, so it's confusing. The Hudson River, the Hudson Bay.
You would think one would flow into the other. That would make sense to me.
You would, but they don't seem to be anywhere near each other.
That is strange. So you're going to continue to watch this and do videos as it changes then, as far as the Hudson Bay goes?
Oh, yeah. As far as the Hudson Bay goes, and as far as the geological changes go, like, it's one of the main ways that I track the shifts. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on all of that to see if it indicates that we're moving towards new timelines or different timelines or realities, or, you know, whatever it is we want to call. Like, I don't have that strict of a thing on what they are, but the easiest way to communicate is to say it's a different reality. It's a different set of circumstances here than it is in world B and world C and, you know, whatever we want to call these different worlds. So I know some people don't like timelines or they don't like realities and stuff, but if there weren't different realities, you couldn't flip-flop, and you especially couldn't flip-flop at different times in different years.
And I love that you guys, and hopefully myself now, is working on a language and getting a language built around this. I think that's really neat too. Another question from Lynn's V. She also asked, Hawaii seems further away from the mainland than before, and Florida is sticking out to the right now. Have you encountered this in your research?
Yeah, Florida has gotten a little bit less crazy for me. Like, it's kind of regained some of its shape, even though it is sticking very far out. But as far as Hawaii goes for me, I know they pushed it in here because this is, you know, they only have so much space on this map. But it's almost like one half of the world is just ocean. And it doesn't matter whether you go for the globe model or the flat earth model. All the countries are crunched together on basically one side. And then Hawaii is just out in the middle of the ocean, and there's just this massive expanse of ocean. And I think that might be the countries moving together more than Hawaii moving away.
Speaking of the countries moving, now I'm glad you mentioned that. It could be from our perspective, and I say our being in North America. It seems to me that everything is going to the right except North America, which seems to be, though changing, seems to be kind of stuck in one spot. Is that just me and my perception, or what do you think on that?
Well, North America's gotten a little bit strange looking to me, as in it's gotten a little bit more sideways. This coast seems to be sticking up, like further up, and this coast is sticking further down. Especially with when we had the Great Lakes change and the borders, it looks like it's gone kind of sideways, but nowhere near as crazy as some of the other countries that are all moving off in those directions.
Right, because South America is, like, we all agree, South America is 1,000 miles wrong. Chile used to be under California, not Florida for me.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I asked the NPCs was about when New Year's Eve came up. I asked people, well, what's the time zone for Brazil? When are they going to hit midnight? And nobody knew. And I said, I researched it. I said, it's called Amazon Standard Time. And it is actually the same time zone as Greenland, Denmark.
Amazon Standard Time. I've never heard of that. Amazon
Standard Time is Greenland and Brazil are in the same bandwidth of, of timeline. Of time zone. Not timeline. Right. Oh my gosh, no, not bandwidths of timeline. Oh my gosh, that'd be so confusing. Like on the one Earth. Oh no.
You know what? You might actually have messed up and said something helpful. Let's go ahead and I'm going to mark that down anyway. Bandwidth of timeline. That might be something into that. We just don't know it yet.
So I wanted to show that it's not just things moving east, because as you can see, Australia is moving west.
Oh, good point. On Australia, real quick, where was New Zealand for you?
Originally, like, Australia was more here, and New Zealand was up here. And I have a small globe that's a residual for many things. Let me see if I can't get a picture that shows New Zealand like where I remember it. But it also shows what I believe was the original shape of Australia that changed later due to some kind of, massive Mandela effect geo shift. So let me see if I can't find the picture of my little globe. and as soon as I find it, I'll screenshot it and put it up for you guys so you can see. But I've featured it in videos of mine too, where I was like, here's like 2 instances where Australia has an entirely different shape and they match up with each other, and they're from 2 different sources.
Nice. To me, New Zealand was about the top, I'd say north, maybe middle, kind of more north west.
I hear you. So yours was more, yeah, well, that sounds about right. I know it's difficult, like when I don't have the picture in front of me, to say exactly, you know what I mean? But let me see.
Right. And the reason that I have a memory on this, back years ago, I used a chat program called Pal Talk, and I met quite a few Aussies and New Zealanders and whatnot. I was researching earthquakes after that and looking at the tectonic plates and how they run, and especially down in that area. And I said, well, I'm down here, I'm going to take a physical or a mental image of what where New Zealand is in relation to Australia, because I've got friends down there and the accents are so close. I want to know where it is on the map, how it looks. So I took that mental snapshot. And until I found Mandela effect, it worked for me until I realized that they had flipped positions and Australia was entirely wrong.
Yeah. And I'm sure Australia looked really, really strange. I know Australia hasn't been too wildly different. I mean, the shape has definitely been kind of different, but for the most part, it's like the position of New Zealand and things like that. So let me just get this up here. Oh, that picture is too small. Well, that's okay. And I'll just take. So I have one picture here that shows a different version of Australia. So I'll just put that up on screen for everybody here. And then I'll find the little globe to show you guys that it matches up.
All right. Have you talked to any New Zealanders or Australians about the effect, as far as like not in necessarily a Emmy chat room, but just in general?
A lot of them have come to my channel, and the ones that are from this reality, they are very hostile to the idea that Australia or New Zealand is different than it was before. And then some of them actually say to me, "No, it was different. I remember. I'm from like where you're from."
Right. Yeah, I've briefly mentioned, without using the ME at all, just kind of mentioned, I always thought New Zealand was above Australia, and they'll give me the strangest looks ever.
I know, for the ones who are from the New Zealanders who are from the New Zealand below Australia, to them, like, their climate and everything they told me that it's snowboarding, it's winter sports, it wouldn't make sense for New Zealand to be that far north, etc., etc. And I'm like, well, for me, New Zealand wasn't winter sports. New Zealand was far more like adventure holiday, like hotter climate. People go for adventure holidays. They filmed like a bunch of the Lord of the Rings there. It wasn't all, the mountains were snowy, but it wasn't all snowy. So let me see. I'm not sure that this screen share worked, or maybe it kind of did.
I got your globe there. We're looking at it.
Oh, okay, cool. So do you see the shape that Australia is here? It actually matches up with the shape of Australia on the old projection map that I had up on screen that said 50.2 million years ago.
Right.
And let me actually take a screenshot of these two together so that,
But it's crazy because New Zealand's at the bottom on this one.
Yeah, but you see it's been really badly quantumly erased from where it was on the top.
Right. I see that, yeah.
Yeah. So let me just, I'm sure I have the other one here somewhere, but let me just for the moment just concentrate on this one. Because I want to show people the one with the, one sec here. Sorry guys, so much screenshotting and screen sharing is getting me confused.
Yeah, I knew there was going to be a lot of it on this show with all the map changes.
With all the maps, exactly. And I'm sure the people that remember New Zealand on top know what I'm talking about. So there's, you can see New Zealand on top right here on this map.
I'm actually trying to go re-grab the chat because it stopped working. I don't know if people stopped talking or if my chat stopped working. So.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I see them side by side. I've got it up on YouTube muted, but I see it side by side here. I got it.
Yeah, you see the position of New Zealand on the old projection map.
Completely different.
There's where it is. Yeah.
That should be the top of Australia right there.
And you see the big curve in Australia's coast here. It matches the old globe.
That is trippy. Side by side like that. That's wild.
And you see that Australia's coast on this side is very much cut off. It matches here with this globe too. So Australia was a totally different shape, and these are perhaps some real artifacts from the past that have slipped through the cracks.
Now that's intriguing, because if we're shifting, that would suggest that only certain items are shifting with us.
Yeah, or that, like we were saying before, that these things are not in their time or their place, and they shifted into where we are.
Fair point.
So I'm not actually sure which, but it's just when I saw these two and they're not related sources whatsoever, that made me suspicious that either Australia looked this way once, or, I mean, there's always the possibility that it looked, you know, it looks this way today somewhere else. But when I, you know, looked at this map being a 50.2 million years ago, that it was probably somebody's imagination of what it did look like, rather than keeping it the same shape as what it was currently in whatever reality they're in.
Right. And we always have to consider that too, that they weren't exactly, you know, like looking above at the land masses at the time either, as far as we know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. Maybe but somebody then again, was.
You got the maps like the Pari Reis map, which really makes you question that at all.
What's the Pari Reis map?
Pari Reis map is, I want to say 1400s, maybe older, but it shows all the continents, including Antarctica, as it would have been without the ice on it. The only way they could have had such a perfect view of all the continents and whatnot is they would have had to seen it from above.
Oh, wow. I've seen a map. I'm not sure if that's the same map, but like it's like a flat Earth map, but it shows Antarctica as not as an ice country whatsoever, but as like, you know, countries. But it is pretty spot on for the current of today's, like the shape of countries. And it is, yeah, unless they had some way of seeing it from above, it would be very difficult to navigate by ship the shapes that close to how they actually are.
Exactly. And this, I mean, is down to almost, you know, and I'd say I'm being facetious, but probably an inch or so within perfection, you know. Again, I'm being facetious, but you get the idea. Apparently the chat was working. They were just being really quiet and watching. So we've definitely got them enthralled. That's good to know.
Good. Enthralled is better than asleep, for sure.
Very much so. Everybody's like stared at the screen and forgot to chat. That's cool. So let's go on back to the main map if we could.
Yeah.
And thank you, Lens V, for those questions. If you're watching or if you're watching later, we much appreciate that. Let me ask you, in your memory, was Malaysia always a peninsula to you?
1 second. Let me pull up the map here and get all confused.
Because it seemed to me, and I could be wrong, but it seemed to me back when the MH370 thing happened, they were talking about the poor island of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur where it took off from.
Yeah, so yes, Malaysia was, when I think about the missing airlines flight, Australia being over here, and there was nothing but ocean. Like the Indian Ocean was enormous, and they had no idea how to even start looking for whatever was left of the plane.
Exactly.
And the Australian government got massively involved and started looking off of their west coast. And, you know, with everything so close together, it's a different story. But this, like the same history happened, but it seemed all the more daunting and tragic when it was just endless ocean and they didn't even know where to start looking.
But now it looks like they've got a pretty narrow band to search through.
Yeah, now it's looking totally different because Indonesia is so big now and Malaysia is here and Australia is right there. So you're not that far from land unless you go completely to the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Right. Also, we've got the Bay of Thailand. If you zoom in on that by Malaysia, that's now the Bay of Thailand.
Yes. Zoom in here. It is.
I don't remember that. Personally, that's new to me.
There's so many things that not only do I not remember, but are brand new. Like when I look at the map, it's just like I open the map and I'm not even surprised if there's something new written there.
Here's one. So I was watching your live stream and you actually woke me up to this one. And I want to know if it was this way for you. Back during 9/11,
yes.
As soon as it happened, I went and pulled the maps of the Middle East up, and which looks goofy as can be now, but I went and pulled the maps up and I thought, okay, where is Iraq? And then I took the mental picture of Iraq and Iran and where they were in relation to each other.
Yeah.
To me, that flipped. How about you?
That's what I had heard people say, that Iran and Iraq had flipped. And the YouTube channel Reality Shifter, he even had quotes from government officials talking about, which was it now? Talking about, I think it was like, I can't remember, one of them being the access to the sea, but it doesn't make sense in which position they are now. But for me, the whole thing here is just too far south. The Middle East is like in a crazy position here for me.
I agree. I was looking at that the other day and I thought it looked kind of goofy. But when you said people were claiming Iraq and Iran's wrong, of course, I've got to go check any claim as a researcher. You know how that is.
Yeah.
So I waited and said, okay, let me see what it looks. Oh my God, they're flipped. Holy crap. Because it's moments like that, you take those middle snapshots, just like I did with Australia and New Zealand. And those are the ones you anchor on and remember, you know?
Yeah, and then when it's totally different, it's always a shock to the eye because the shape recognition, you just go, that isn't right. That's not what it looked like.
Exactly. And that's the other funny thing. The shape of Iraq and Iran is correct as I remember them, but the names are flipped.
It was literally just like Iraq and Iran, like switcherooed on you.
Yeah, they really did.
That's so strange.
I didn't pay no attention until I seen that video you did where you said people are mentioning it, and I was like, oh wow, they're right.
Am I mentioning it? Yeah. And I'm just, I don't know. It's a very strange one altogether.
How about Italy and Sicily over in the Mediterranean? Sicily's been kind of chug-a-lugging along, it seems to me, in the last couple years.
The map is quite fuzzy here, so I'll try and find a different map of Italy. Or maybe we can see it kind of from here. But you see the Mediterranean Sea got even smaller, and the writing went all whoop for me. It went all...
it's fit it on the map now.
Yeah, you can't write it like on the map, and it was written straight across, and now it's all over the place.
Right, wavy as can be.
Wavy as can be, which is not, it's not easy to, I don't know what they have to do to make that happen.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, for me anyway, Sicily was not here whatsoever. It's right up on top of Italy, and Italy wasn't like leaning back against the other countries like this. Italy was like straight down.
Did the boot have a heel for you in your original reality?
Yeah. So mostly the shape of Italy is mostly still the same, but for me, Sicily was over here, and Corsica and Sardinia were really small, so they weren't taking up all this space over here.
Right, and it seemed to me that I remember it. Sicily was slightly more above Italy because the boot had to move upwards to kick it.
Yeah, it wasn't like up on top of, I think it's less than 2 miles between Sicily and Italy now.
That's crazy. It damn near looks like, if you pull it up on Google Maps, it damn near looks like you could build a bridge from Sicily to Italy and not use a lot of equipment.
Yeah, I don't think you would have to. I think they could easily make that happen.
Surprises me that they haven't already, or that hasn't just appeared as a thing that's always been there. I'm glad Boom Boom mentioned this. You're not the only one. What does Russia look like to you in comparison to what you remember it?
Russia's looking like, and I know different map projections are different, but the shape of it is very, very crazy. Like Kazakhstan was nowhere near this big. Mongolia wasn't still a country for me. China was a totally different shape. Japan was further south. So Russia was more like round, like it went further south here at the bottom, and it wasn't as long out here to the side. Like I don't remember it having this long part here. So, and also, of course, it was ice cap to the north of it. There was no Svalbard. That was all ice cap.
I remember Russia not being quite so big. To me, it looks like it's like tripled in size from what I remember.
Yeah, Russia's pretty darn enormous. And like, it just seems to me just so strange. And I know, of course, that Russia was bordering Europe, but it just seems to be squishing Eastern Europe a lot. Like, I just feel like the Eastern European countries were bigger. Like, Russia wasn't quite squishing in this much, that there was more space for these countries.
Right.
Europe seems really like squished and compacted.
Like back in the day, and this was brought up to me by my friend the other day. I didn't even think about it till she mentioned it. Back in the day, Russia and a lot of Russians would tell you they were from the Ukraine. Wasn't Ukraine a lot bigger? Or was that just me?
The Ukraine, like, to me, the size is not so wrong, but the shape is kind of strange. It looks a little bit wobbly.
Right.
And Poland was like squarer. That's one of the weird things, is a lot of the countries in Europe were a lot more square for me. Like Germany was a lot more square, didn't have that part sticking out, didn't have Denmark there. There was, you know, a clear waterway here in between these countries. France was a lot more square, didn't have this big long arm sticking out of it. Spain kind of looks like the head of a bull now, and it didn't have that going on either. They were more square and they were sticking further out to sea. And now they're kind of like,
now I'm going to see a bull head every time I look at Spain.
That's what Spain looks like now. It looks like a bull's head. And Portugal was almost the same size as Spain for me. And Austria was almost the same size as Germany. And Austria was directly below Germany.
So did Germany have a sea line and a shore back in your time?
What now?
Did Germany have a coastline to you?
Yeah, on the north of it.
Okay. I wasn't sure. When I was in Germany, I was literally like 3 months old and 3 years old. So.
Oh, yeah. Not really looking at the maps too much there.
Right. I've heard a lot of people claim Germany never had a coastline. That's why I was wondering, in your opinion.
Like, for a lot of people, it probably didn't. But for me personally, it did.
Gotcha. So tell us about the Svalbard incident.
The Svalbard incident of it existing, or the Svalbard incident of it being the world seed bank?
Both, because apparently, like when you realized this, there was a big hoodoo on your channel. You were kind of freaked out about the whole Svalbard thing. So tell us about that.
There was so much crazy going on. So there was the Vault 7 thing was out at the time. And apparently this was located here in this place called Svalbard that wasn't even real for me, you know, previously. It's real in Orion, obviously, but I'm saying before that, it's like this place was not even there. I find out there's more than 2,000 people living on it. I found out that it's the World Seed Bank now instead of the North Pole. I found out that the Vault 7 stuff and all these this story about the gold going missing from under the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there was that lecture where they were talking about stealing resources from other timelines.
Yeah, the quantum computer lecture, yeah.
Yeah, and I was getting freaked out. I was like, I wonder if they actually did that. Like, if they actually took resources and put them here into this place that wasn't even, you know, particularly there before, and that had taken up such an important spot in the world, that it was the World Seed Bank, and that it had all these different research things going on it. It's very, very interesting. As in, there's this good friend of mine who served in World War II and was stationed all over the world, and he was stationed on the North Pole in McMurdo Air Force Base when it was there, the military base. And that was, you know, he used to talk about, like, the Russians would come through and these different things would happen. And now none of that, there is no North Pole. And McMurdo Air Force Base is on the South Pole now. And the World Seed Bank isn't on the North Pole, it's on Svalbard. So with all these different things moving around, all these different moving parts, I was concerned that there was some kind of way for them to basically be ripping off the Sagittarius arm and moving things here to Orion, especially since the people I had encountered Orion were not always the nicest of people. I didn't put it past them to try and do something like that.
Oh, no doubt. These Orionites are a little more mean than the Sagittarians that I remember.
Yeah. So I was definitely freaked out in that video.
I didn't know Norway owned so many little islands and whatnot over there.
Norway owns quite a bit of stuff, and Denmark seems to own quite a bit more stuff than I remember.
That's pretty crazy. But like I said, I went a geo major, so that might have been always that way, and I didn't notice it. I'm not a map major by no means. That's why I got you on here.
It's possible that on maps that we've seen before, they didn't have the brackets with these countries on them. But I know I never saw Denmark under Greenland until I came to Orion. And
yeah, that's pretty new to me.
Mm-hmm. And it's just weird seeing these brackets like of the countries that own them, because the brackets with those countries that own them just weren't there for me. So it doesn't mean like they didn't own them. It's just I didn't know anything about it.
Same here. Same here. Last one on the geography changes, and we can go ahead and keep the maps up if you want. I like the way it looks.
Okay.
Do you think there's a purpose or pattern to the geography changes?
Yeah, I originally was hoping that it was more just a different timeline where things had happened differently, coastlines had formed differently, all this, because I still believed in old school ideas of the geological shifts and of evolution, that things happened over long periods of time. And then the Mandela effect is really making me question that, because I can see that things can just change and not particularly have an explanation to them. So I thought that perhaps it was just a different version of the Earth. Different decisions were made, different things happened, different volcanic activity, whatever. And now I'm looking at it and I'm kind of going, well, I'm unstuck in time. There's people who are stuck in time and it's their world map and they live their whole lives, the map doesn't change. And then for those of us who are unstuck, we're not in our time or our place. We're like the out of place artifacts, except we're people. What we're seeing is millions of years of geological shifts and changes. It is almost like time travel, because we are seeing what, like I said, what was projected to happen 250 million years in the future is these kind of movements of the countries all coming back together. And it looks like we may see that in our lifetimes.
It really does, doesn't it? I've wondered about that myself. Well, you mentioned the Pangea thing earlier and all of it all coming back a lot quicker than it's supposed to. Chet says, never heard of the Labrador Sea. How about yourself?
I have heard of the Labrador Sea, but there's a lot of strange things going on with these different seas. I'm sure like people that were following myself in SMQ saw about the Aral Sea, how it's still on my map here, but this sea, I saw this sea appear on this map. It was all green there, and Uzbekistan was all that orangey color. There was no sea there. And then one day there was this Aral Sea, and I was like, Aral Sea, and I think I even mentioned it in one of my geography videos. ARAL. I'm not sure how to say ARAL. I'm not sure how to say that. Blah 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 blah. Maybe people remember me saying
URAL.
ARAL on this one. It could also be a URAL in a different timeline, different setup.
Huh. But I would have sworn when you guys were originally showing it, that was AUR. I could have been wrong, but I would have sworn it had the U in there.
It absolutely could have. It absolutely could have. I was just like, it was another one of these words that showed up that I didn't know how to pronounce, but I said, oh my gosh, there's a C there. And then, I think it was about a week ago now, the sea dried up and died. And there's just boats rusted and littered right where they were sitting, just in the desert. And this whole new history showed up that the Soviets were trying to do irrigation and they dried it out. They overworked it and they killed the sea. And that it's been dry since 1985.
Oh, wow.
So that's, I was like, yeah, we're unstuck in time, because it's the sea. We saw it come into existence, be born, dry out, and die. So we existed longer than this sea in a very strange, disjointed way of kind of popping in and out from reality. And that kind of hit me hard. I was like, this is not something expected to ever see in my lifetime, that I would be there for the beginning, middle, and end of this sea.
Right? It makes you wonder if we're on any kind of linear path at all at that point. The Middle East. I said I was done with map changes, but I just remembered one more. You and I briefly touched on this offline, setting up Egypt. Can you go ahead and zoom in on Egypt for me real quick? Because even with the blurriness, we can see what I'm about to say on this map.
Yes. Let me just get that going.
And you said the Middle East don't look right to you.
Yes. Hang on, I pressed that too much. There we go. Yeah. The Middle East does not look right to me, no.
Excellent. So Egypt right here is pink. Everybody see that pink there. And then it goes into the yellow where Saudi Arabia begins. The issue I have is I remember this really good story in this funny book that keeps jumping around also called the Bible. But there's a story of this guy that parted the sea and ran across it to get back into Israel. Problem is he could have now just walked right along the top of the Red Sea and went right back into Egypt because they're connected to the Middle East now. Do you remember Africa and the Middle East literally being connected?
No, I remember the Red Sea being a lot bigger.
I do too. I looked at this the other day. My friend was up here with me and we were looking, just kind of skimming over maps, and I zoomed in. Now, wait a minute. No, Egypt didn't touch. It was close, but it didn't touch the Middle East as I remember.
Yeah, it didn't.
And what about the Middle East besides that looks wrong to you? You said it looks all kind of goofy to you.
Well, I just think it just looks like somebody squished the whole region, and that's why so much of it went so far south. Because for me, the Middle East was in the Middle East. This was Europe, and there was obviously Russia and everything, and there was the Middle East, and then there was Asia. But now the Middle East is below everything. Everything got so squished, the Middle East kind of just fell out here on top of Africa.
Makes you wonder why they call it the Middle East and not the Lower East, huh?
Yeah, why is it not the Middle South or something?
All right, so leaving that map up because, like I said, the Egypt one, that tripped me out. That was just, wow.
It is a very good change, to point out to people, to say, why did Moses split the Red Sea? If it's connected to the Middle East.
Right. Why didn't they just walk around the top of it? Why waste the time to split it?
Yes. Craziness.
So there's you one to throw at people. Let's move on to theories. I've only got a very few questions left, but it should be enough to have a pretty good conversation. As a theorist, I must ask, this is something else that I try to ask everyone, do you prescribe to a specific theory?
Kind of, as in there's some that make more sense to me at different times than others. I try to observe everything that I can, like the maps, and like I said, I would read everybody's comments where they were talking about their home realities and what they remember and where they're from, and I would take all of them as correct and say they're just from different realities, and then from that draw the conclusion, also having flip-flopped in my life, that there are different places that all exist at the same time and we can flip-flop between them, and then also that time is out of whack. I believe that so because of the shifting that I'm seeing is not random. It seems to be the countries coming together.
I really think you're onto something with these map changes and tracing them and watching them as they move, because I think this could be a huge piece of evidence for, determining later on what's going on. What do you think of SMQ's entity theory, which I personally love?
Is that about the theory of, well, not the theory, but the actual thing of talking about the Mandela effect and mocking it even, and then things showing up?
Yes.
Yeah, that occurred to us. Just chatting away there on Twitter and talking about different things, like silly things, like laughing about the moon changes and saying, oh my gosh, what next? And he said, I think he was the one that said, we're going to see museums on the moon. And I said, we're going to see skyscrapers and water parks on the moon. And then the next thing was...
That's exactly what was said. Go ahead.
The next thing was, the Moon Memorial showed up, and we started gathering evidence for that. And then the Andy Warhol Moon Museum showed up, and that was massive. And then they started to say that they had conclusive evidence that there was water on the moon.
Yeah, SMQ made the claim the other day that there's like lakes worth of water, and I was looking into it. It is lakes worth in large amounts, but it's only in the polar region. So to clarify what he said the other day on the stream.
Yeah. So
the Warhol on the moon, the fact that he said, "What are we gonna have next? An art museum on the moon?" Then we have Andy Warhol and others up there. That was crazy.
This is pretty darn insane. Like going from the moon being completely barren to having all these different things up there, such as memorials and museums and whatever amounts of water that seem to be there. And for it to all come in at the same time after we were joking about it kind of made us feel like not that we were doing it, but because we were joking about it and because we were so open about the Mandela effect, that the Mandela effect was like somehow listening to that. And the response was that these things came into existence. And then it was like, oh, we need to be careful, you know, what we joke about, because for whatever reason, these things came to pass. And either we, on some level, knew those changes were going to happen and then joked about it and then caught up with that reality, or, like I said, the Mandela effect somehow made that reality appear and we came into contact with it. I'm not sure which way around it is.
You know, I get to thinking about that entity theory, and it just makes so much more sense over and over. Like, I don't know if you follow Unbiased Non-Defense work where they've been doing those Sam songs. That's interesting, and as well as the weird synchronicities that we just can't explain. There's no way that any physical thing could have made it happen, yet we find these pattern synchronicities, like something invisible behind the scenes is kind of like pulling strings here and there to make things happen. So it kind of all flows together to me, you know?
Yeah, and I think that there's far more at work than just random things, as in I think that some of the things are very directed, and it's the intelligence of it is like an unseen spiritual force, basically, that it's intelligent and it's there, but we don't understand very much about it, because we were asleep, or perhaps because we weren't shifting. It wasn't something we came into contact with so much. And now, because we're awake in the dream, I think that this thing's job was not just to be like changing things and trolling, but also to keep people asleep, because I think it fits into the kind of emergency programming people have to try to gaslight you into going back to sleep whenever you try to wake up about the Mandela effect.
Oh, the gaslighting sometimes can be off the charts. It's crazy. How about the CERN theory? I've looked into this a lot as a theorist, and there's a pretty good amount of evidence to suggest that they could be partially involved, if not fully. What's your opinion on that?
It's really difficult to know, because, like, so I first heard about CERN being turned on in 2008, which was the year that I had that big flip-flop shift happen to me.
Right.
And I was just so unsure. I know I said, oh my gosh, it's such a bad idea, this whole God particle thing that they want to do. Like, they're crazy. They might kill us all. This is ridiculous. But I did wonder, like, is it that CERN is causing chaos and it's causing some things to come unstuck in time, and that's what's happening to us? Or was the Mandela effect always something that could happen, but they wanted to take credit for it, so they built CERN?
That's a good possibility, and I'm with you on that one. I'm so torn, and the main reason being, even though I know there are other, like, bunches of other particle colliders in the world, we find a lot of waves and a lot of quantum storms and stuff, even when CERN is completely turned off. So that's one piece of evidence that just doesn't jive as far as that theory goes.
True, although there are different CERNs and different versions of Earth. So the CERN from where I'm from was switched on and became fully operational in 2008, but in different timelines, CERN was switched on for the very first time in 1958.
Really?
Yeah. So they built CERNs in a whole bunch of these different worlds and turned them on in different decades.
Gotcha. And, you know, I've thought that too. What if it's not something in our reality or timeline, but say the second reality, CERN or whatever, manipulating this timeline. Have you considered that thought?
I have, but in all honesty, I think if people wanted to just plunder, like if they just wanted to take gold bars or they just wanted to take resources, take clean water, they wouldn't bother like changing the Bible. They wouldn't bother trying to push the countries to all come in together. Like there's so many things that just seem to be deliberate that fit more with Revelations to me than it does with the agenda of somebody at CERN. Because for the most part, I'm sure people at CERN don't care about the Bible. They want to get paid. They want to make their big discoveries. They want to do all these kinds of things. They wouldn't be interested to say, oh, you know what, we're going to sit down, we're going to rewrite the Bible. It's going to be gas.
And we're about to get onto some of the Bible stuff here in a minute also. I'm glad you mentioned that. Everything's flowing so great today. I love it. Do you think there are messages in the changes? For instance, with each change, like we were talking about the color phases and whatnot, the color themes, but do you think it could be like telling us something, maybe an order in which we're fighting about order, but like maps, then foods, then plane, or whatever the case may be, any kind of correlations?
I think so, because like watching EYA's channel, and it's just EYA in capitals, she made some good videos where she showed correlations between Bible changes and what was going on in the world. So remember when there was there still is a lot of fuss, but all these crazy things happening, like the Charlottesville stuff and the riots and all these kind of crazy things.
Yeah.
Like at that point in time, liberal and the N-word and stuff showed up in the Bible. And it said, like, a liberal person is a most dastardly person, or let me get that exact quote. But it's almost like reality was flashing both ways, and things that happen in real life show up in real life. You know what I mean? The things that happen in real life show up in the Bible, basically.
Yeah, like retrocausal effects.
It's just, it doesn't make sense because it's, it's history from 2,000 years ago, but it's also kind of mirroring things that are happening now.
Right. That's interesting. While you're pulling that up, Jay Holland over here in chat, this is one of my buddies. I've been talking to this guy and hanging out with him for over a year now. And he said, they're talking about the Flash over here in chat and having time travel aspects and particle accelerators and whatnot. He said, my friends keep trying to get me to watch the Flash. He said, I tried to, I really did, but it was too slow.
Oh boy.
Like you can't make that stuff up.
No.
If the Flash is too slow, there's not a chance for you. Shark K, glad you joined us. Great to have you here. Appreciate it.
I have that verse pulled up.
All right, you want to go ahead and share it up? You've still got the map up right now.
Oh, let's share the page. I was.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hang on. 1 sec here.
Yeah, when I do stuff, I try to show the audience so they know I'm not just making it up or reading it off whatever,
That's
I always
fair.
try to double prove what I'm doing.
Yeah, so they can see like the part I'm trying to pull up here, if it'll show up. Here, I think
I don't want anybody to take my word for anything.
That's
Always
true.
research.
Got to do your own research. Okay, I got it pulled up here. The KJV Bible.
Nice. Always use the KJV. I do.
So it's Bible Gateway, in case anyone's looking for that. Bible Gateway. And
love that site.
Isaiah 32:5. The vile person shall no more called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. And then Isaiah 32:8. But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things he shall stand.
Do you happen to know what it said in place of liberal before?
I think it was wicked. Like the wicked will devise evil things, and by evil things he'll stand.
Or the evil shall devise evil things. Okay,
yeah.
Keep that in mind for a question that I have later.
Okay.
I like that. The fact that we've seen the multiple word changes to the same word. I'm getting back on that here shortly. So messages. Okay, moving on to next category. Then we're going to get into the Bible stuff. How much or I'm sorry, have you done much research into manifestation in that whole philosophy?
No, I haven't. I think that SMQ knows more about it than I do.
Okay, what would you say to those that say we are manifesting the ME, like just us manifesting it and not something outside of ourselves? Or do you think it's even possible?
I mean, if the Mandela effect is more like a lucid dream, perhaps, then it would make sense for crazy things to be showing up because dreams can be crazy. But I don't think that there's anybody here that would mess with, you know, countries, the population, the Bible, stuff like that doesn't make any sense to change if we're dreaming about it.
That's true. And, you know, that's one thing that bothers me being a theorist and making theories is I can explain 3/4 of it or I can explain half of it, but there's so much more evidence that I just can't explain away.
Yeah.
Like I can explain map changes and say word changes, spelling changes, but I can't explain body changes with the same theory.
That's true. It's like you can't. It's really difficult to find anything to cover all of it because there's so many things that it's strange parts that it's like we need some kind of different understanding arc to make it all make sense.
Right, a new language, which, like I said, you guys especially. Hopefully, I'll be able to join you two working on that. So you're a part of the Christian community, right?
Yeah, and I've actually found the page where I pulled up a bunch of the crazy Bible changes. If we want to go into that, I have that ready.
By all means, I do not mind going into that. Are there any specific ones while you're getting that pulled up that really like got you?
Well, this one here, if I can just get this semi under control, lols. I think this is the correct one here. Hopefully it is. Let me see, where are we here? Yeah, this one about the pomegranates and the networks has always been an interesting one since it showed up.
So you want to go ahead and read it to us and tell us why it really got you so badly?
Okay, so like for me, it just does not make sense. So it's 1 Kings 7:42, and it says, and 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, even though 2 rows of pomegranates for 1 network to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters that were upon the pillars.
What in the world did I just read?
Yeah, and that's copied and pasted into a different part of the Bible, word for word. It's a different book. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's a kind of ridiculous change. I wonder if it shows here.
Networks. That's one. I get pomegranates, but networks just doesn't seem to me like it belongs there.
No, that's what, like, networks just seems very strange. And I do believe this one showed up when there was a big load of fuss about the 5G networks being announced.
Huh. Retrocausality once again.
And
Any
then,
idea what network could be replacing, or is that just an addition?
it's like the pomegranates. I'm trying to think of what the original was, and it's just kind of escaping me right now. But I know it wasn't networks. It was something like they were trying to decorate. You know what I mean? They weren't. It was nothing to do with pomegranates for networks.
Right. And why would you need pomegranates for networks anyway?
It says,
makes me want
it says 400 pomegranates for 2 networks. You need a lot of pomegranates for your networks.
I've never set up a pomegranate network. That's interesting. It makes me want to go into Strong's Concordance and just see what they define network as for that time period.
Yeah, what did they even think that it is? Huh. Let's see. The other 2 things that for me are definitely increased and weird in the Bible is the bowels and the meat. So as far as bowels in the KJV go now, there's 37 instances of bowels. And bowels seem to have replaced heart, kind of like in meaning, perhaps not in the exact word heart, but like often when somebody is feeling terrible in the Bible or moved or sad, like they'll feel it now in their bowels, and their bowels will be either like exploding or falling out or strange things like that, instead of your heart tightening or your heart about to burst. It's like your bowels now are going to.
What in the world were those people eating?
Meat. That was the next change I was going to show you here. Bread and all that is kind of gone from the KJV now, and there's 285 instances of meat in the Bible. And
I thought meat was very like touchy as far as Jewish tradition goes, like certain meats and certain prep
certain meats are very unclean. You didn't want to be pork and things like that. But also in the Middle East at that time, how do you refrigerate meat? It would go bad and kill people a lot. You know, you'd have to eat it, you know, you'd have to smoke it, or in that kind of heat, you'd have to have processes to do to the meat if you're going to eat meat all day long to make it safe.
Right.
So it's not very practical to eat meat absolutely all the time. So it's not just M-E-A-T that I don't have it pulled up here, but also M-E-E-T is used as food meat, even though it's meat as in meat a person. So there are even more instances of meat than the M-E-A-T. And there's 285 of the M-E-A-T. So there's loads of meat and loads of bowels in the Bible now.
That darn E and A flopping back and forth between words is weird, like Berenstain to Berenstain, but now meat to meat.
Yeah, meat and meat. And I did find it interesting with the Berenstain about like the AI, and like we were just saying there about SMQ AI, like how AIs are showing up all over the place or disappearing or appearing in a word it has no business being in. And I don't know if that's trolling or if that's like something to do with an AI.
Huh. You know, I've heard the AI theory before, and it's not something I give a lot of credence to, but of course, you know, as a researcher yourself, you can't just poo-poo any theory at this point.
Yeah, it's really, without getting a deeper understanding of the effect, it's really hard to write off, you know, theories at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I'll be honest, twice I've said when it comes to like certain changes, people will claim, no, that's just too close. There's no way. And the damn thing will flip-flop every time I do that. Kind of like proving, nope, you're wrong again, buddy. Shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, like you feel like, oh, I've almost got it figured out. And the effect is like, no, let me throw something crazy at you. Then you're just like, okay.
Exactly. Are there any new theories coming out of the Christian camp?
Well, as far as it seems to be, is that the world is changing for not just like the New World Order and the One World System to be in place, but then obviously the Antichrist and the things to come to pass, the last parts of the Bible. And I was talking about in my live streams that it kind of concerned me that a lot of the times when the event would show up, like the beginning of tribulation, we would switch timelines and everything would just restart again.
We've had that happen quite a few times, from tsunamis to earthquakes to a couple different things. How many tsunamis have you counted that literally disappeared?
At least 3. And that's not counting my original timeline where there was a lot of fear of one was going to hit the west coast of the United States. But I mean, here in Orion, there's been so many tsunamis that appeared and then just like disappeared.
Same here. I've counted 3 or 4 myself that there was an earthquake. We're waiting on a tsunami. It's about to... Where'd it go?
Where's it gone? Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're getting ready for something crazy to happen, and then you pivot off into different timelines. It's like, okay, not now, I guess. At some other point in time. Which, you know, is confusing because then it's like, are we going to experience, you know, the next part of Revelation, or do we have to wait more? Like, I think that people in other timelines, I think that World War III has already happened. I think that, like, the tribulation terrible things have already started and things have already happened. And then for us, we keep pivoting away into other places and alternatives. And I don't know how much that's going to happen and how long it's going to pivot for, what effect that has for us as a people in this time.
All right. Yes or no question. Have you looked into, quote, the event?
I've looked into the event, and like, as far as like my understanding of the event was either, you know, World War III starting, or the star called Wormwood like falling upon the earth and poisoning the waters and those kind of things. But the star called Wormwood came really close in a reality that I was in, where it was shadowing in the sky, and then it just either I disappeared or it disappeared. Then it just wasn't there anymore.
Okay, going along the event thing, assuming that it is going to happen regardless of your timeline, do you believe that that same entity, the ME entity, if you want to call it, could literally be like pushing us away every time we get close to it?
What's that now?
Okay, so, and you pretty much have answered this, but I want to break it down into one definitive question. So the event,
Yes.
every time we get close to it, it seems like we switch. Do you think that this could be the actual ME entity, kind of like getting us really close and shoving us off somewhere else?
It could be, or it could be. What one of my thoughts is maybe we've been taken out of that situation altogether. Because I do remember a part in Revelations about the souls of people who, were crying out to the Lord. And there's still mention of the souls of the saints who were slain, but that's not the part I'm talking about. Was like people who were taken away. It didn't say raptured, but were taken, and didn't know how long they had to wait, and were like crying out to the Lord, like, how long do we have to wait, basically. And then it was, the other thing was that the saints that are already slain, like, how long did they have to wait? And that was the only mention that I remember, and now it doesn't seem to be there.
Right. So let me tell you what I found in the Bible patterns, and I was just curious about your take on that. That question just kind of came to me. So the Bible patterns I found, I was doing some research. I don't know how much you watch my channel, but I did like 3 different ones that had like 33 plus Bible changes in it. And I got to looking at the changes, and I noticed that it seems like every time there's a word change, say on, it's always changed to the exact same other word, like on to in, awesome to terrible, or terrible, or I think it was horrible, or so. It's the same meaning there.
Yeah.
But it seems like when there's a change, it always changes to a specific word, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I asked you what that one word had changed, liberals had changed from, because it seems like when there's a word change, and I don't know any better way to say this, it specifically goes to one other word. Have you noticed that?
I have heard about the on and in, and it does make sense for I think of the Lord's Prayer. It had changed from on earth to in earth.
Yes.
Yeah. And
there's another instance when it's speaking of John Baptist, not John the Baptist, but John Baptist. And in that verse, I don't remember exactly which one it was, that it has on to now in also.
It's a strange word switch, isn't it?
It is, just that one letter, and that's something else I've noticed. It's so close on some of these things. It's almost as if we're getting nitpicky on some of it,
Well, I don't know, because an O and an I could be a very pointed change. Just like one of the themes that we've seen with the Mandela effect shifts, which is not a color change, it's like a female change, where, like I said, the birds now have milk, and the Roswell aliens are female now, and the Sasquatch footage is female now, and there's so many. They put female boobs on God in the Sistine Chapel, and even there's a Bible change here that shows about like men with their boobs full of milk, and there's just boobs and femaleness like showing up everywhere. Here it is, right here, Job 21:24. His boob, his bones are moistened,
full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's just there is like a female theme going on. So when I look at like what could be the more like esoteric meaning of a switch between an O and an I, it could be like a binary thing, like a switch, like. You know what I mean? Like switching a symbol of gender, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I follow you there. I follow you.
It could be. I don't know if it is, but...
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was finished.
Another prime example that I found of this switch, pull up, if you would, just First Corinthians... I just took a drink, sorry. 1 Corinthians 13.
Okay.
In here, I've noticed, as you're getting this pulled up, every instance of the word love that I remember in this chapter has been changed to charity. It says charity probably 15 times in this chapter now.
Mm.
Like verse 4. Verse 4, I remember, is love suffereth long and is kind, love envieth not, love vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. Now it's charity, every one of those.
That is weird. That is very, very weird. Charity is more like Masonic language.
It is, isn't it? And there's another one down here, faith, hope, and charity. I remember being faith, hope, and love. I've heard half the people say they remember charity, another half remember love.
I'm kind of torn on that one because there was a Guinness Book of Records several years ago for the longest living triplets, and they were called Faith, Hope, and Charity. So I wonder if they were from that timeline.
That's interesting because the thing was faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Now it says the greatest of these is charity.
I know, and it should be love. I mean, not that charity isn't important, but love,
Right.
You know, it's the center.
Exactly. These verses were built around the idea of love, not charity, at least as I remember it.
Yeah. I wonder what that means.
Exactly. That's what I've noticed. They've all changed directly to one specific word. Love has changed all the way through this to charity. Awesome has changed to dreadful or terrible through the Bible. There's different ones are specific word change, specific cross. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Specifically, like targeted word switches.
Yes. And they always switch to the exact same word. On always the end. Love always the charity. Awesome always the dreadful and terrible. And that could be authors right there between dreadful and terrible.
So that suggests that it's a singular consciousness that's altering this, because different minds dreaming different things wouldn't target words for one exact switch.
Exactly. Which is why in our offline or off-air research, when we start doing this, I want to try to put together a list of words that used to be and words that are now, and see if we can find some kind of message deliberately being laid in here.
Yeah, or some kind of coded, whatever it may be in there that even if it's not directly written out as a message, maybe there's something that gives us a hint of what it's trying to say.
Exactly. And I've always had this other thought, the Bible is the one thing that, and you mentioned it a couple times today, it doesn't seem to match all the other changes. The fact that it's changed it all opposed to everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It always seemed off to me that the Bible would be changing while everything else is.
I know. And it just like, apart from the things that like, words like networks and liberals and mufflers and what was it, like car parts and wagons and cannons and Trump and Pence and weird words like modern words like this all showed up in the KJV. Apart from those things, which seem to be like randomly splashed throughout the Bible, there seems to be, like you say, deliberate word switches that we haven't figured out exactly what it is it's trying to point out with these word switches, like trying to take love out of there and trying to have a doctrine of charity instead.
Right. And I'm not sure if it's about the doctrine or if perhaps the Bible could be the key of reading everything else.
It could be. Perhaps it like decodes the rest of it.
Right. That's what I was thinking for a while. And I don't have enough proof or evidence to fully say yes or no, which is why I wanted you guys' help. But yeah, that's one thing I was thinking.
One thing that I think, and I could be completely wrong, but when it comes to kind of the switching of hearts and bowels, I think about the changes that we've seen to the human mind and where we process, where the people from this reality, like where they process their emotions and their different types of thinking. If you guys look at the human brain right now, instead of having two hemispheres, it has basically three. So there's the two hemispheres we're used to, and then a big bulging hemisphere in the back. And my original timeline, that big bulging hemisphere at the back, the reptilian part of the brain, was really small. It was like the size of a walnut, is what they used to say. And now it's almost, like I said, the brain is basically split into three. And the frontal lobes have been greatly reduced. And the frontal lobes, that's where we would process a lot of our higher thinking and a lot of things like that. And having a massively just enlarged reptilian side in the brain, And that's what they call it, guys. That's not like a conspiracy theory,
Right.
snake people thing. That's just literally like what they call this, like really primitive part of the brain that makes you more selfish. It makes you more mean. It makes you more hungry for stuff. Like you want dominance of the food. You want all the partners. All these like really basic primitive things. By extending that massively, it's almost like it moved a lot of consciousness lower. And the heart, you think of that as being like a higher part of love. But the bowels, I mean, you could have, gut feelings about things, but in the natural order, you wouldn't process your heartfelt emotions in your bowels. And in the natural order, we wouldn't process our higher thinking in the lowest part of our brains.
Right. And 2 points on that. First, we were talking about the oddity of the eating and sleeping schedules amongst the community. It goes right back to that reptilian brain, what controls that. And also, again, we see here an example of what I was saying, heart to bowels each time.
Yeah. Bowels everywhere. Like it makes sense to say that, your heart, well, I think it was like my heart burned and rested not boiled, but it says now in Job 30:27, my bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. And it's like if your heart torn, your bowels don't usually boil or hurt. You don't usually have heartache in your bowels. So it says to me that
worst case of diarrhea known to man. I'm sorry, I didn't go there.
Well, that's why people are so mad, especially about this changes, because it is like gross and like silly and weird. And there's so many times where somebody's bowels will yearn for another person. I think there's a verse here where it says, my bowels yearned. Yeah, Genesis 43:30. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother. And he sought where to weep, and entered into his chamber and wept there.
His bowels.
His bowels yearned upon his brother.
Sad, our bowels go goofy, huh?
Well, it's, if you miss somebody, do you miss them like with your heart or with your bowels?
I generally feel it in my heart, not my tummy.
Yeah, so I think that's like just a big change. And it could be a mirror of perhaps some kind of more body changes that are to come. Maybe we will process our emotions in our bowels. But it looks, from a literary standpoint, is totally weird. It's even if you do get your emotions in your tummy, it's not written that way.
That is so strange. I've not even heard of this one before. I'm going to have to mark this down.
Yeah, if anyone goes to the sorry, I was trying to find the name of the website, just saying King James Bible Gateway, and you look for bowels in the KJV Bible, it comes up with 37 instances.
Huh. I've got it written down in my book. Now I might have to do a stream about that next week when I get back.
And I know it was 32 instances last year because Meeks B made a video about it. And now it's 37. So there's more and more bowels everywhere.
Nice. So I'm going to have to go back and look. You said Meeks B did one last year.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to go back and look at that too. Moving along, staying with the Bible thing, have you ever looked into the Bible code stuff before, like the letter skip Bible code thing?
I have heard of that. I have definitely heard of people doing like the letter skips and looking for different answers like in the numbers, which could make sense because I think like in the older Jewish traditions, there was like a lot of things put upon the numbers, the golden ratios, the different numbers of things like held significance, and there's even like the book of numbers, these kinds of things. But obviously, as someone that has not grown up in that tradition, I don't really understand. I know that some numbers are special. I know that I'm seeing repeating numbers with reality shifts, but I don't understand the whatever it is, like the esoteric language of numbers yet.
Gotcha. Pat on the back says back on the bowels one more time. In energetic medicine, in energetic medicine, bowels represent fear. Could it be a message for us to let go of all 3D fears?
I think letting go of fears is always a good thing, because even if people say, oh no, that sounds more new age, actually in the Bible it says don't worry about anything, and pray. And it's like, if you worry and you have fear all the time, that's like a lack of faith. So it is perfectly fine to like let go of the fears and maybe just have faith that this is happening the way it's supposed to be. We're all here for whatever reasons that we're supposed to be, and to keep our hearts up.
Right. Real quick question. This got mentioned in chat also. Turmeric or turmeric?
For the spelling, for me it was turmeric.
Yes, me too. No R there at all.
No.
All right. I just wondered. Somebody asked that in the chat. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and ask her. I don't take a second to ask. Wouldn't all the Bible alterations and changes to the Bible change the Bible code and prophecies to do with it?
Yeah, but I think a lot of the Bible prophecies and changes and things, it makes sense for it to happen now, because things are being revealed, because this is the time of revelations, and things have been revealed already. So now it's changed to Revelation, the book of Revelation, as in there's one singular one left. And I think that's going to be the Lord Jesus Christ.
Interesting. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that takes me to my next idea that I wanted to share with you. So would you agree the Bible says the body's a temple?
Yeah. And I've seen plenty of things like to back that up, that the body is the temple.
I'm glad you said that too. Okay, so in Revelation, there are certain things that have to happen in order for the revelations to come true, right?
Yes.
So one of them would be the Great Delusion, which a lot of people claim the Mandela effect is. And going along this timeline, or going along the stop line, I mean, it says something to the effect, and I don't have the Bible in front of me right now, but something to the effect of the third temple must be rebuilt.
Yeah, true.
So would it be a stretch to say that the third temple would be the body, and the body's being changed or rebuilt?
I think that we can see a lot of the body changes, and I'm not sure if it means like that's the part of the body that needs to be rebuilt, but it could very well be, or it could be laying the foundations for whatever it is that needs to happen. I know that the literal interpretation is like they're going to build the temple, but right. If the body is the temple, then this, while we think that maybe we're just getting trolled by evil, because there's also, the part where Satan is allowed to do what he wants for a short time, so he may be trolling and messing stuff up. There is also a possibility that these body changes could be laying down the path for something that is necessary for this to happen.
I got to think about that. I was on a live stream. Well, I was on somebody else's live stream in chat the other day, and they were talking about that, and it just kind of clicked. Wait a minute, body's a temple rebuilt. Oh wow, okay. So I just wondered what you thought about that idea.
It's definitely an interesting idea. I see in the chat they're saying, seems like we are being told the Bible is Satan's deception. I don't think that that's what's going on at all. I think that it's the famine in the land for the word of the Lord. So it's like you had a certain amount of time to get it and to hold on to it and put it in your heart, and then that famine in the land for the word of the Lord came, and now it's really difficult to find residue of what the Bible was before.
It creates a whole lot more argument too. Here's another thing I was going to ask you real quick before we jump off this topic. Lenny mentioned the 144,000. I've heard this quite a bit. Do you think the Mandela effect is connected to the 144,000 spoken of in the Bible?
I think that we could be witnesses, and maybe that's what that part that I can't find anymore in Revelations was saying about the people that were taken, that we could be witnesses in this time. And I see also somebody was saying here, if it's the Great Delusion, why are there so many of us that why are there so few of us that can process the changes? And that reminds me of saying that, when the Great Delusion comes, it'll confuse even the very elect if it can. So right. The people that were possible, yeah. The people that were blessed enough for the seeds that were laid the seeds took root and grew in us. It's not that, you know, we're the very best and all this kind of stuff, because there's amazing Christians who didn't wake up, who can't see the changes, who, you know, spend hours every day on the Bible and they can't see any changes in it. So for whatever reason, we've been allowed to keep our memories, and we see the stuff here with the bowels and all this mad stuff that's going on in the Bible now. And perhaps it is that thing that this is some kind of time where the delusion is so strong that there is only a very few of us that can see it. And the 144,000, for my opinion, is that the babies that were slain by King Herod when he was trying to kill baby Jesus, yes, that all of those little boys, they were from the 12 tribes of Israel. They are boys without sin because they're little kids. And those people could be the 144,000. And that we could be the other witnesses, the witnesses that were taken. And I'm not sure what, I know I didn't read any particular term that was put towards those people, but it just said, you know, these people who were taken, and they're crying out, how long? How long do we have to wait?
That's a great take on that, because I've never heard anyone go with the witnesses instead of us being the 144. I like that. I've never heard anybody put it together like that. Well done.
Thank you.
I love the fact that, you know, conversing, we've all got such a different mindset that it opens up pathways and ideas that we'd have never thought of on our own. That's just so great.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to say it's a crazy time to be here and to be witnessing, you know, what's going on right now in reality, in life, and everything like that. But I know that we're put here for a reason. Like I said, like when I fell out of my life, out of my reality, I didn't do anything to do that. I didn't have any idea of how that could even happen. Just one day you wake up and the entire world is different. The maps are different. The history's different. That your bones are different. Your body's different. And it's like, what could that be except the work of the Lord? And what, you know, why does he want you right here, right now? Perhaps to witness this stuff. And maybe we can't, you know, wake up all these people and change the tides around. Maybe it's just we have to do our best in the situation, witness as much as we can, and keep speaking the truth, even though the truth is always unpopular.
The truth shall set you free. Isn't that what it said at one time?
Yes. Hopefully that it still says that. It doesn't say, you know, bowels will set you free.
Actually, now it says the truth will make you free.
Make you free? That's kind of got like different implications than set you free.
Right. That's like John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
Yeah, should not perish instead of will not perish.
Right. Will or shall, as I remember it.
Maybe you won't perish. And it's like, no, that's not what it said before. It wasn't like, well, perhaps you won't perish. It was like, you will not perish.
Right. Exactly. There's so many weird nuances there. Jumping off the Bible briefly, well, probably the rest of the interview, let's go into the other ancient scriptures. Have you investigated any other ancient texts aside from the Bible?
I haven't. And if only I had, then I would, you know, I'd have so much more to add if I had studied like the other ancient texts, but I really didn't have any contact with the other ancient texts.
Well, let me stop you there. You did a video, I guess last one you put on your channel, if I'm not mistaken, about the Hopi prophecies.
Yes, I did look into the Hopi prophecies, but I was thinking more along the lines of like the Quran or the Torah or those. I hadn't looked into those at all, but I did look into the Hopi prophecy, but that was a lot shorter than, you know, like a holy, like a huge book. You know what I mean?
So what did you find in that or any other ancient text? It ain't got to be religious. Just, you know, in any other ancient text you've studied, have you found anything to mention the ME or anything like the ME?
The best one I found, apart from how it fits into Revelation, is the Hopi prophecy, and is the excerpts, especially the ones I put in my video, where it talks about the gateways between worlds opened, and now there's people wandering around in bodies who are not from this reality. And I said, that sounds like us.
Right? Mm-hmm. Or the ones that the spirit blinded. Are they mentioned in there, the ones that are spirit blinded?
the ones that are spirit blind, it says that if you're not spiritually strong in this time, that you'll basically just disappear. Like, you'll still be walking around and doing stuff and everything, but without the spiritual awakeness, without the spiritual awareness, I guess was exactly how they put it, they gosh darn kind of just fade into themselves, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. Have you seen a lot of Unimundi's work?
I have seen some of Unimundi's work. He does really good videos.
He really does. I love his work. I'm trying to get him on here one day. I'm kind of full up on interviews right now, but when I get cleaned out again, I'm going to try to get him on. The reason I'm asking, I meant to mention this to SMQ, and I totally slipped my mind by the time I got to the interview. He said he would love to know if any other religious texts, like the original religious text, have changed. Did you see Unimundi's video where he showed that 2 prominent rabbis have come out and said the lion has changed to wolf in original Hebrew?
I did not see that, but that is very, I did not know it had changed I had presumed it had changed in the Greek and the Hebrew, but I didn't know until now, so that's very cool. As in, it's cool they see the change, but it's not cool that it changed, obviously.
Yeah, and these are 2 separate, extremely prominent rabbis who both come out and said, yeah, it says wolf now.
It does say wolf now.
So that's pretty crazy. So I'm going to start to wrap this up here. I've only got a very few more questions, pretty general questions. Here's one that I just thought about yesterday. Do you have any advice for somebody who may be just coming across this stream, kind of new to Mandela effect, don't really know exactly what's going on? Is there any advice you could give to a new person?
I think perhaps for a very new person, it would be good to start with the changes, like, the brand name changes, the store name changes, like JCPenney, and there's a lot of good Mandela effect channels for that. One of my favorite channels for all kinds of changes, not just those, but he does a lot of those, is Curiouser and Curiouser.
Oh yeah,
that would be definitely a good place to see how affected you are, what do you remember, what kind of timeline you're from, and then to go into the deeper implications of it. If you're like, yes, everything's changed, oh my gosh, then that's the correct place to then take it further and to study more into what is going on. But I would also say that for people who've just woken up, especially people who are very social and have always relied on other people, and have always been able to share their experiences with other people, in this particular case, you don't want to go overboard, because if your whole family is unaffected, you're going to isolate yourself. And I know it's not like that with anything else. Like with anything else, like if you took up some crazy hobby like skydiving or something like that, even if they hated skydiving, they would still be themselves. But with the Mandela effect, if you bring it up to somebody that doesn't want it, they will absolutely push you away. And then you don't get that like kind of human connection from the people closest around you. So if you gently bring it up to the people around you, then you can see who is affected and who isn't, rather than coming on full strength.
Absolutely. Such great words of advice and wisdom. And I would also like to add, don't fear. You're not alone. There are a lot of other people who are going through this. So don't get scared. Don't sit on your couch for a week, balled up in a ball, rocking back and forth, going, what the heck happened? What the heck happened? Have faith. You're not the only person experiencing this.
Yep, and there's a lot of us here too, so that if people need to hear like a friendly voice in the community, there's lots of Mandela Effect channels that are sincere and are going through lots of similar things, like with their family lives and dealing with changes and dealing with all this kind of stuff, and like the human aspect of it.
Absolutely. I think that is wonderful advice. And you're right. There are so many YouTube creators that are very open and are very glad to talk to anybody who's new in the effect and anything they got to say. I know a lot of them have said, here's my email. I know someone said, here's my phone number. Call me if you need to talk.
Yeah, and like reaching out to each other on that level. And that's really cool. But I also say for new people, like there are mean, like, not even mean, I'm going to say just like crazy, like an anti-intelligence to this discovery, if we want to put it that way. So there are videos that are totally gaslighting that are trying to say that the effect isn't true. It's just you're so amazingly stupid that you don't know what anything looks like or what anything is. Right. And there's also trolls who will try and tell you basically the same thing. And that's like the first hurdle. If you can get past that, you realize that they can't gaslight you and you know what you know, and they can't talk you out of it, then you're ready to go forward into the Mandela effect.
I also would say that look at both sides of everything. Look at the ones that say Emmy's fake and look at the ones that say it's real, and then make up your own mind. Never take somebody's word for anything.
Yes, especially since some of the gaslighting videos, I've seen some of those have up to 900,000 views, and then the real videos are suppressed and they knock your subscribers off the whole time. Like they unsubscribed Dark Wolf from me, from my channel. He had to resubscribe.
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me. I couldn't believe it. I thought you'd quit doing work for a little while and just kind of took a break. I didn't know you'd been still putting stuff out besides the Lost and Found bin.
I know. And I'm sure there's other people that think I just quit too. And I'm like, no, I didn't quit. It just, they just keep knocking off the subscribers.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and drop your screen share and pull your channel back up here so people can see it. Last couple things, besides plugging your channel, we'll do that in a second. Is there anything that you would like to add at all to this interview?
Just that, let me see, I think we covered a really good range of things. And as far as anything else, with the changes and with the Mandela effect and everything like that, I don't want people to get too worried or go into any panic attack. It's normal to emotionally process this because it is, a big load of truth that you weren't expecting. But it is very rewarding when you get past the emotional processing of it because you're getting the truth then, finally.
Right. I'm reading the chat. Sorry, somebody's kind of a long chat here.
No problem.
Just 1 second.
And I think it would be better to...
Okay, I got to read this out.
What is it?
So Jay Holland says, should also probably tell the newly affected that it doesn't matter what shape the earth is, just keep love in your heart.
Yes, that's a good one too.
The reason I laugh is because you're going to find a whole lot of flat earthers on the Mandela Effect train or with their videos named Flat Earth and Mandela Effect. It don't matter what shape the earth is, guys. Let's not. Real quick, just opinion. Are you a glober?
I have not even looked into the argument. Like I see arguments that make sense for.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. The line has gone really bad now.
Do what?
I was saying the line went really crazy for a minute. Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, sounds like we're clearing up now.
We clearing up?
Yeah, I'm hearing you a lot clearer now.
Oh, good. Okay. Good.
I was asking, are you a globe Earth, flat Earth, square Earth, or what are you?
Right now, like I was saying, I'm looking into all the different things about it, but my focus being the Mandela effect, right now it's just kind of like what's going on in general rather than is it a globe or is it flat and are the measurements changing and what shape is everything? Tesla believed that the Earth was a realm, and I'm not sure if it's a realm or if it's a globe or if it's flat or what it is. I just know that there's a lot of things changing up in here.
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm technically a glober, but that's not the most important thing to me at all. So finally, last but not least, where can people get a hold of you and see your work?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Chick Effect, and I'm also on YouTube. So the YouTube channel there, maybe I can get the...
I've got it pulled up on the screen right now.
I was going to say, if I can get the link, maybe I can share it, but I'm not sure if I can.
Yeah, definitely share it in the chat. Guys, for those looking for her channel, I had to type in chick Mandela effect, and she came right up. If I just type in chick, I get a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, I got a weird link because I'm in my channel right now, so I don't think I can actually share that one to get to my channel.
Gotcha. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull the link real quick. I'm also going to have it in the, yeah, it'll take too long before I get there. I'm going to have it in the description box at the bottom of the video here. So down below the video you're watching, it will be in the description box in the next, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So we really appreciate coming in the den with us, Chick.
You're welcome.
We would love to have you back anytime you'd like to come back and join us.
Cool. We can see if there's any more crazy discussions to have, and there always is with the ME.
Absolutely. I have much enjoyed talking to you. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. There was one other thing I was going to say, and I don't remember what it was. So I'll let you have the floor for just a couple minutes. You can tell everybody bye or anything you want to tell them.
For sure. I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to the cool conversation that we had today about the Mandela effect. And I'd like to say that I think it's always better to take the truth, even if it's the ugly truth, no matter what is going on. I would much rather know the truth than to go back asleep and to stop, questioning what's happening with reality, what's happening in the world. So I hope that you guys feel the same way. And I hope that together, like if we write down when the shifts happen and what we notice around that, like if we can get enough data together on what's going on, that perhaps we can understand this thing a bit better, and that could make our lives easier. Because when the shifts are totally random, it makes it a little bit jarring sometimes. So anyways, that's my little part there, and I'm so glad that everybody was here. And yes, I miss the yellow sun as well.
Oh, yes, me too. Me too. So once again, thank you, Chick, for stopping by and joining us. If you'll stay on the line after I stop the broadcast, I'd appreciate it.
I will, for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another amazing episode of In the Den. I told you guys it would be a treat, and it was. It was a treat to me, too. We've been going 3 hours, and it don't even seem like we've been going 30 minutes. So I've very much enjoyed it. I think it's been great. Last but not least, everybody always remember, stay awake, but dare to dream. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.